Chapter 340, Technique Derivation Divine Achievement. Thousand Mechanisms, Jade Sphere, Golden Chapter, discovered by Ko Hong and Dao Xuanzi at the border of Shilin Province in the 100-stone cave of the Tianji sect. Although it's only at the nascent soul stage, it has the effects of distinguishing qi movements and understanding cause and effect. Li Fan's comprehension of the formless killing intent makes the Jade Sphere, Golden Chapter technique indispensable. Sun-stealing token formula, obtained by Li Fan from Sikong Yi, a descendant of the sun-stealing sect. Capable of seizing life destinies and creating avatars, living up to the name of the sun-stealing sect. As for the secret technique, changing appearance at will, it comes from the intelligence agent of the Five Elders. Association, Zhou Qingang, stationed at the Tian Island. Paired with the extraordinary item, 7 Aperture Exquisite Heart, it can change appearances, even deceive the testing of the 10,000 Immortals Alliance's White Jade Questioning Heart platform. Qi movements, life destinies, appearances. Theoretically, when these three are combined, one can completely transform into another cultivator. Li Fan had considered such a plan before. However, they are all elusive existences, and with Li Fan's current theoretical accumulation, even if he were to meditate for hundreds of years, he might not be able to create a new technique based on them. Now, with the opportunity to utilize the Pearl of Derivation, and considering that soon the Heavenly Sealing Spirit Array will become widespread, cultivators across the world will have no privacy. For Li Fan, the ability to have another identity at any time is quite important. Therefore, without hesitation, Li Fan immediately wrote down the contents of the 2 techniques and 1 secret technique on a blank sheet of paper. Though it was just 1 page, as the handwriting continued to fill it, the characters became smaller and smaller. No matter how much content, it could accommodate it all. In an instant, Li Fan stopped contemplating, and the blank paper was filled with countless tiny characters. Is it done? The little girl, still propping her chin with both hands, looked down at the table with lifeless eyes, not even lifting her head as she asked. Yes, Li Fan nodded slightly, but before the word, done, could leave his mouth, the blank paper in his hand turned into streams of light, floating towards the desk where the little girl was leaning. On the table, numerous characters instantly appeared. Seeing this, the little girl pouted, somewhat displeased. You have such high demands, completely transforming into someone else. With the blueprints for changing qi movements, life destinies, and appearances, what about flesh, consciousness, and soul transformations? Hearing this, Li Fan wasn't embarrassed, just truthfully admitted, collecting existing techniques has already been my utmost effort. The methods for flesh, consciousness, and soul transformations are extremely rare and beyond my capabilities. So, can't you derive them? Li Fan looked at the little girl and asked. Well, it's doable, but it used to be rare to have a break. It's really annoying. The little girl raised her head, glared at Li Fan, and muttered under her breath. Li Fan's heart stirred, but he pretended not to hear, his expression unchanged as he earnestly watched Pearl of Derivation's movements. Rivers and mountains of the 5 dynasties. With a clap of her chubby hands on the table, the countless characters on the tabletop instantly flowed like water, flying upside down towards the huge sphere above her head. Joining the sequence of rapid transformations. The frequency of character flickering was several times faster than when Li Fan first saw it. However, the little girl leaning on the table seemed extremely sleepy, nodding off incessantly. Li Fan pondered silently, not daring to disturb. Quietly raising his head, he stared at the sphere composed of changing characters above. This place obviously wasn't in the real space. It was more like a world composed purely of consciousness. Yet Li Fan's consciousness unquestionably arrived here with his body, interacting with it. In addition to Pearl of Derivation's consciousness, Li Fan occasionally felt another gaze sweeping over him in this space. The owner of the gaze didn't conceal their presence, the warning in their eyes undisguised. So Li Fan behaved quite conservatively. As he remained silent, the little girl became more and more drowsy. This space fell into complete silence. Only the constantly changing light from above, reflecting on Li Fan's face, made his expression somewhat unpredictable. Pearl of Derivation, only these 3 words flashed through his mind, and Li Fan suppressed all other thoughts, silently calculating the passage of time. Aside from that, he didn't want anything else. When the derivation by Pearl of Derivation had passed more than 2 hours, a dazzling light burst from the huge sphere above his head. At the same time, the little girl seemed to wake up from a dream. Rubbing her eyes, she looked as if she hadn't fully woken up, weakly saying, "It's done." Countless small characters surged on the table, turning into a blank sheet of paper, reappearing in Li Fan's hand. Li Fan squinted his eyes and read it seriously. Mysterious spiritual transformation. With the mysterious and unpredictable power, replicate all life fluctuations of the target and make corresponding changes. If there is no target, random transformations can also be generated. When targeting a living being for the first time, a small part of the target's life tissue is required. If there is no target, no materials are needed. Only life traces can be replicated, and it's impossible to replicate cultivation realm. Only life forms at the nascent soul and below cultivation levels can be targeted. After transformation, regardless of the previous cultivation level, the transformed entity will only retain the highest nascent soul cultivation. Li Fan slowly memorized the technique's content in his mind, and the characters on the blank paper gradually dissipated. Truly worthy of Pearl of Derivation, the effects of this mysterious spiritual transformation technique are even better than I expected. I just don't know how it will actually perform in practice. Li Fan became more and more delighted as he read, unable to help but ponder the technique's content repeatedly. Although it's only at the nascent soul level, the limitations are only reflected in the selection of transformation targets and the strength restrictions after transformation. But there's hardly any discount on the ability of transformation itself. Less than greater than. Chapter 341, Kidnapping the Pearl of Derivation. Although the Pearl of Derivation appeared as a little girl, Li Fan did not treat her as a child. The Pearl of Derivation had existed since the Wasteland era when the Immortal Sage re-established the 10,000 Immortals Alliance. If his assumptions were correct, the Pearl of Derivation had been working tirelessly for at least 5,000 to 6,000 years. This was enough to make Li Fan show her due respect. The little girl glanced at Li Fan and nodded. Yes, deriving techniques is very exhausting. Suddenly, she widened her eyes and asked, "You still have 1/3 of an hour left. Will you stay a bit longer or leave now?" Li Fan, naturally, was very considerate. "I will leave when my time is up. Being able to spend time with you is an honor for me." The little girl immediately showed a very satisfied expression. "Great, I can rest for another 1/3 of an hour," she said with a bit of excitement. During the remaining time, Li Fan did not just stand idly by. Under the seemingly non-existent supervision, Li Fan began to tentatively ask the Pearl of Derivation a few questions. "Are you a cultivator?" "A long time ago, I was. But people need rest and can die. Later, the Immortal Sage fused me with the Pearl of Derivation," the little girl lazily answered, lying on the table, looking indifferent. "Now I won't die, I just get tired occasionally." "How long have you been deriving techniques without resting?" "How long? I don't remember. It's always been this way. No rest is allowed until all techniques are derived. But I can steal a bit of rest occasionally," the little girl said helplessly. "I really want to finish early and go out to relax." Li Fan and the Pearl of Derivation communicated smoothly. The presence in the dark did not stop Li Fan from asking increasingly bold questions. Thus, Li Fan gained a preliminary but relatively detailed understanding of this top treasure of the 10,000 Immortals Alliance. Reluctantly, Li Fan's allowed time finally ran out. "All right, time to say goodbye," the little girl waved her hand, bidding farewell to Li Fan. "I hope to see you again," Li Fan bowed respectfully. Then he felt the surrounding light dim. After a moment of darkness, when he opened his eyes, he had returned outside the black stone monument of the Law Enforcement Hall. The black-robed cultivator who led them was still waiting. Examen Yu was also beside him, meditating, seemingly studying a newly acquired technique. Han Yi was still nowhere to be seen. Li Fan did not disturb the two, standing quietly aside. He recalled the recent encounter with the Pearl of Derivation. But his mind was blank. As expected, Li Fan understood. Except for the technique, mysterious spiritual transformation, clearly engraved in his mind, the rest of the memory from leaving the waiting room to appearing outside the black stone monument could not be recalled. He couldn't even remember how he obtained the technique or what the Pearl of Derivation looked like. The top treasure of the 10,000 Immortals Alliance is indeed heavily guarded. This must be a restriction directly acting on the cultivator to prevent those with ulterior motives from spying on the Pearl of Derivation. No wonder, apart from knowing its existence, no one knows any other information. However, Li Fan closed his eyes, hiding the emotions in his eyes. "These restrictions are useless to me. All memories have already been synchronized with my true self." In the Tianquan mirror in Tianyu City, Li Fan's true self seemed calm. But in fact, his mind was constantly replaying the first meeting with the little girl, the pearl of derivation. Forced labor for thousands of years, to ensure efficiency, even merging a cultivator with a unique treasure, turning her into an immortal laborer. The 10,000 Immortals Alliance is truly wicked and insane. The pearl of derivation is too pitiful. I must rescue her. From the conversation with the little girl, Li Fan learned that the pearl of derivation was her companion treasure. However, after being discovered by the immortal sage, she was transformed using a secret method for maximum utilization. Her body disappeared, and her consciousness fused with the pearl of derivation. She became an odd existence, both human and treasure. Immortal but also sleepless, continuously deriving techniques. Until no more techniques could be derived. The immortal sage once promised her that the day the techniques were exhausted would be her day of rest. The pearl of derivation naively believed that rest meant real rest. But to Li Fan, the term, rest, was not a kind word. Publicly and privately, Li Fan was obliged to rescue the pearl of derivation. For other cultivators, stealing the pearl of derivation from the heavily guarded headquarters of the 10,000 Immortals Alliance was an impossible task. But for Li Fan, now that he had learned her information, it was not impossible. Li Fan already had a preliminary plan on how to do it. First, the pearl of derivation was guarded by a cultivator. Based on speculation, the guardian was at least at the Dao integration stage. Therefore, the first step in Li Fan's plan was to cultivate to the Dao integration stage within the 10,000 Immortals Alliance and then become the pearl of derivation's guardian. Second, develop feelings for the pearl of derivation through daily interactions. Third, when the time is right, activate the truth, return to the anchor point of 1 year, and during preservation, choose the third option, the memory of a person closely related to oneself. Fourth, repeat the actions of the previous life, return to the pearl of derivation, and let her inherit the memory of the previous life. These decades or even centuries of memories would naturally include the process and results of the pearl of derivation deriving techniques in the previous life. With these memories, the pearl of derivation would no longer need to derive techniques painstakingly. When needed, she could just take out the techniques derived in the memory of the previous life. Using this great gift, deepen the relationship with the pearl of derivation. Fifth, activate the truth again. Repeat the third and fourth steps. The repeated reincarnation memories would definitely push the intimacy between Li Fan and the pearl of derivation to the highest level. Li Fan would make the pearl of derivation recognize him as her master. The final step, activate the truth, choose to preserve one item, the pearl of derivation. According to past experience, unique treasures of the world would not have identical duplicates. If there was a conflict, the weaker one would disappear, and the stronger one would remain. With countless cycles of memories, Li Fan's pearl of derivation would undoubtedly be stronger than the one anchored at 1 year. So, the final result would be the disappearance of the 10,000 Immortals Alliance's pearl of derivation. Li Fan's pearl of derivation would remain. This was Li Fan's initial plan to kidnap the pearl of derivation. Although the process would undoubtedly encounter various problems. For example, becoming a Dao integration cultivator of the 10,000 Immortals Alliance and infiltrating the pearl of derivation's side was currently very far for Li Fan. Also, the pearl of derivation should have some backhand left by the immortal sage, making it impossible for her to easily recognize someone else as her master. But, in the face of countless reincarnations, these were nothing. As long as there was a theoretical possibility, for Li Fan, it was a certainty. The pearl of derivation was the foundation of the 10,000 Immortals Alliance. And the 10,000 Immortals Alliance was the foundation of the immortal sage. Although the immortal sage now lived in seclusion, indifferent to worldly matters. From the statement, the number of cultivators should not be too many or too few, it could be seen that the 10,000 Immortals Alliance, at least, was a means to maintain a stable number of cultivators for the immortal sage. Li Fan was very curious. If the foundation of the 10,000 Immortals Alliance was uprooted, how would this elusive immortal sage react? Chapter 342, Museum of Divine Treasures. When facing the transmission of the longevity realm from the immortal sage during my Dao integration, there should be some resistance, right? I suppose, Li Fan thought to himself. Sorting out his thoughts, Li Fan suppressed his wandering thoughts and began cultivating the technique, mysterious spiritual transformation. The true spirit of a person is like the flowers of a tree. Thousands of trees, myriad blossoms, forming the extraordinary in the profound. Profound and unpredictable, changing at will. Li Fan first read through it entirely, then closed his eyes to practice. Not long after, he opened his eyes, frowning slightly. When he first read Mysterious Spiritual Transformation, he was attracted by the content of the technique, feeling excited. However, he only discovered when he began practicing that this technique was somewhat too obscure and difficult to understand. His feeling was that it was even more difficult than when he first cultivated the 1000 Machine Jade Sphere Gold chapter. But it was natural to think about it. For such techniques involving fundamental changes in life essence, if Li Fan could easily cultivate them, he would probably doubt the effectiveness of the technique. After a moment of contemplation, Li Fan took out a enlightenment pill from his storage ring. Although it looked plain and unremarkable with its black and white colors, it could rival the accelerated cultivation mode of the Tianquan mirror. This pill was purchased by his clone Lin Fan when he went to the Jushan province to buy techniques. Due to its limited supply, each person could only purchase a limited amount. He only had 6 of them on him. He had been reluctant to use them before, but now it was just the right time to use them. The effective duration of one enlightenment pill is basically around a month. I hope to get started on mysterious spiritual transformation within 6 months. Li Fan thought to himself and then swallowed the enlightenment pill. Then he entered the enlightened state of the Tianquan mirror. With the two combined, in an instant, Li Fan felt that the inside of the Tianquan mirror seemed to brighten up. With a slight movement of his thoughts, the words he had just read from Mysterious Spiritual Transformation surfaced in his mind. Every word, every sentence, spontaneously compared and confirmed with similar parts from past secret texts he had read. This is called making lateral connections. In just a few breaths of time, the words in Li Fan's mind, from the original single chapter of True Spirit Transformation, expanded several times over. Every word and every line was filled with annotations formed from past experiences. And the unfamiliar terms in the technique were constantly changing beside it. Li Fan subconsciously pondered and comprehended. While Li Fan's true self was like a general sitting in the center of the army, watching the evolution of his comprehension of the technique in his mind. His thoughts were extraordinarily clear, everything under control. This made Li Fan unable to help but feel as if he had a brilliant mind, able to calculate everything in the world. The extremely profound mysterious spiritual transformation now seemed not so difficult in Li Fan's eyes. He even had the energy to contemplate his next plan. While Li Fan's main body was diligently cultivating, at the headquarters of the 10,000 Immortals Alliance, in front of the black stone tablet of the Law Enforcement Hall, Han Yi finally came out spiritedly. Congratulations, Dao friend. At a glance, it's obvious that Han Dao friend has gained a lot this time. Li Fan was the first to open his eyes, smiling. Haha, well said, well said. Although Han Yi's excitement subsided momentarily, the joy on his face couldn't be concealed. But after leaving the headquarters of the 10,000 Immortals Alliance, Dao friend still needs to be careful. Nowadays, all cultivators in the world know that you possess the Dao integration technique, Li Fan kindly reminded. Han Yi's expression immediately became solemn upon hearing this. He clasped his hands towards Li Fan and said, Dao friend, rest assured, I naturally understand this principle. At this time, the voice of Examen Yu also sounded. Being able to say this shows that Dao friend Xiao Fan is worthy of deep friendship. Han Yi also nodded in agreement. Li Fan just smiled faintly, didn't respond, but asked, I wonder what plans the two of you have for the future. Examen Yu scratched his head and said, I don't have any long-term plans. Currently, my idea is to stay in Tianquan City and complete the cultivation of my technique first. What about you, Dao friend Xiao Fan? He asked back. Li Fan glanced at Han Yi beside him, smiled, and said, I heard from Han Dao friend earlier that he obtained a treasure called the Heavenly Transformation Pill in the Blue Feather Legacy, which made me curious about the Yuandao province. Now that I have nothing else to do, I plan to try my luck in the Yuandao province. Maybe I can find something unexpected. Examen Yu couldn't help but feel surprised. The Blue Feather Immortal Lord has fallen for so long, I'm afraid all the Blue Feather legacies have already been looted, right? There's no such thing, Han Yi couldn't help but say. It's strange to say, even though it's been 8 years since the Immortal Lord's fall, there are still new Blue Feather treasure boxes appearing in the Yuandao province from time to time. They don't seem like someone's prank. Inside are quite valuable treasures. Open double angle bracket invincible from offering sacrifices to Ancestor Master close double angle bracket. So if Dao friend Xiao Fan really wants to try his luck, there's no harm in it. There's such a strange thing. Examen Yu rubbed his chin, his face full of puzzlement. Li Fan smiled and said to Han Yi, I don't expect to have such good luck as Han Dao friend. For me, just finding a blue feather treasure box would be a great fortune. Han Yi quickly said, Dao friend doesn't need to be modest. In my opinion, your luck is also extraordinary. He stopped abruptly halfway through his words, his face somewhat embarrassed. Li Fan's heart moved slightly, but he didn't delve into it. Instead, he took the initiative to resolve it for him. What about you, Han Dao friend? After hesitating for a moment, Han Yi still replied, although Tianyu province is good, it's not where I should stay. He squinted his eyes, seemingly lost in thought. After a few breaths, he resolutely replied, I still want to return to the Yuandao province. Li Fan and Examen Yu glanced at each other, their faces showing some inexplicable expressions. But they both maintained tacit understanding and didn't inquire further. Examen Yu looked at Li Fan and Han Yi, jokingly said, then the two of you can accompany each other on the way. Li Fan nodded slightly, while Han Yi agreed, naturally. Just as the three of them were chatting, the black-robed cultivator who was leading them finally recovered from his petrified state. All right, since everything has been taken care of, let's not delay. I'll take you out now. The three of them quickly stopped chatting and followed the black-robed cultivator back the way they came. As they transformed back into beams of light, shuttling from top to bottom towards the exit. Sharp-eyed Li Fan saw that there were hundreds of young cultivators gathered on the suspended land under the law enforcement hall for some reason. Some of them even looked like children in their teens. Obviously, this group of people were not personnel from the headquarters of the 10,000 Immortals Alliance. Li Fan couldn't help but ask the black-robed cultivator, Senior, what place is that? The black-robed cultivator apparently understood what Li Fan was asking and casually replied, that's the Museum of Divine Treasures. Inside are collected historical items of commemorative value. Chapter 343, Unknown Existence. For example, the remains of the first Dao integration cultivator to fall in the wars between the 10,000 Immortals Alliance and the Five Elders Assembly, the remains of immortal sage Qinglian. Hey, over the years, the Five Elders Assembly has put in a lot of effort to retrieve immortal sage Qinglian's remains. Another example is the ancient heavenly sword sect's ceasefire stele. It is said that there were two giant steles in front of the heavenly sword sect. One inscribed with, Stop for the idol, and the other with, Ceasefire of Destiny. Just these two steles were as effective as an impregnable mountain protecting array, exuding unparalleled might. Unfortunately, the Museum of Divine Treasures only managed to collect the ceasefire stele, while the Stop for the idol stele is nowhere to be found. Hearing this, Li Fan couldn't help but think of his own Stop for the idol fragment. He wondered if it was the same as the heavenly sword sect's Stop for the idol stele. As Li Fan was lost in thought, the black-robed cultivator's words forcibly brought his attention back. Speaking of the Museum of Divine Treasures, we must mention the remains of the first cultivator infected by the immortal mortal miasma. You might not know, but these seemingly ordinary remains are highly sought after by many cultivators. Their value is absurdly high. The skull of this cultivator is placed at the center of the Museum of Divine Treasures. When I first saw it, I thought it was the remains of some ancient powerful figure. To my surprise, it was just a poor fellow. I really can't understand why those people find such things worth collecting. Talking about the Museum of Divine Treasures seemed to excite the black-robed cultivator, who started to introduce various collections inside to Li Fan and the others. Han Yi and Examen Yu were quite interested and listened attentively. Li Fan, on the other hand, felt a stir in his heart. The remains of the first cultivator infected by the immortal mortal miasma. I still have one of his ribs in my storage ring. It survived when Master Yin self-immolated. Li Fan couldn't help but become interested in the skull placed in the Museum of Divine Treasures. Taking advantage of a pause in the black-robed cultivator's speech, Li Fan asked, Senior, how can one visit the Museum of Divine Treasures like those people we just saw? The black-robed cultivator smiled. The Museum of Divine Treasures is generally not open to outsiders. No amount of contribution points can grant you access. If you want to apply for a visit to broaden your knowledge without any connections, the simplest way is to become a dedicated guide for the Museum of Divine Treasures, just like I did. Li Fan was slightly stunned and exchanged glances with Han Yi and Examen Yu. Why does the Museum of Divine Treasures need dedicated guides? Examen Yu asked, puzzled. The black-robed cultivator chuckled, why wouldn't it need guides? Do you think just placing a sign in front of each exhibit would be enough? First, the Museum of Divine Treasures, like the main avenue you walked through in front of the Law Enforcement Hall, has all its spiritual energy in a dormant state. Even divine senses can't leave the body. All exhibit information is only briefly marked. To know their backstories, a guide is essential. Secondly, do you have any idea how vast the Museum of Divine Treasures is? The black-robed cultivator laughed softly. It houses the entire 10,000 Immortals Alliance's collection from thousands of years. When I left, the number of exhibits was 38,475,684. Without a guide, an ordinary person visiting would be like looking for a needle in a haystack, unable to find what they want to see. Having a complete, enjoyable visit within the limited time would be a fantasy. Moreover, as you just saw, who are the people visiting the Museum of Divine Treasures? Without guides, how could they understand anything? The black-robed cultivator snorted, making his point clear. Li Fan and the others showed expressions of having learned something new. After a moment of silence, the black-robed cultivator continued, of course, if you join the 10,000 Immortals Alliance and increase your merit level to Yanfa Pearl 30, you get a free visit every 10 years. However, reaching Yanfa Pearl 30 is incredibly difficult. Even I haven't reached it. Then he looked at Han Yi with a half-smile, of course. If you, Han, cultivate well and break through to the Dao integration stage, you can just report in and visit anytime. Han Yi felt a bit embarrassed. Senior, you jest. Dao integration is not easy to achieve, even with the technique. The black-robed cultivator laughed deeply but said nothing more. The rest of the journey was silent. The black-robed cultivator led Li Fan and the others back to the platform where they initially arrived. All right, my task from the Immortal Sage is complete. We will meet again if fate allows, the black-robed cultivator said coldly. Li Fan felt a mysterious force envelop him. It seemed to repel him from the 10,000 Immortals Alliance headquarters. May I know your name, Senior? Li Fan asked as he was about to leave. I'm just a nobody. As a guide, I'm called Guide Ding Yin. As a lead, I'm Led He. That's all. The black-robed cultivator shook his head and did not answer further. As Lead He's figure gradually disappeared, Li Fan and the others found themselves back in the Four Seasons garden of the Tianji court. The location was exactly the same as before they left for the 10,000 Immortals Alliance headquarters. Han Yi, now that you've visited the 10,000 Immortals Alliance headquarters, do you know where it is located? Li Fan asked, smiling at Han Yi. Han Yi pondered for a moment, then replied, if I'm not mistaken, the 10,000 Immortals Alliance headquarters might be inside the Tianshuan Mirror. Examen Yu disagreed. I think the Tianshuan Mirror is just a means of transportation. If the headquarters were inside the Tianshuan Mirror. There are so many Tianshuan mirrors in the world. Does that mean wherever there's a Tianshuan Mirror, there's a 10,000 Immortals Alliance headquarters? In that case, why do Tianyu, Tianshan, Tianshu, Tianquan, and the central region exist? Han Yi was speechless, unsure how to refute. Li Fan thought deeply, finding merit in both arguments, and played the mediator. After some discussion, the three did not delve further. They thanked and bid farewell to Immortal Sage Jicheng, then went to the Dao discussion building in Tianquan province, where Han Yi treated them to a grand feast. As the saying goes, all good things must come to an end. The three parted ways afterward. Examen Yu stayed in Tianquan province. Li Fan and Han Yi headed to Yuandao province together. Time passed quickly, and half a year later. In the Tianshuan Mirror, Li Fan finally mastered the basics of mysterious spiritual transformation. Now that I haven't yet refined my clone, let's see the effect of this divine technique. Suppressing his excitement, Li Fan disguised himself and headed outside Tianyu City. He dug a secret chamber, prepared all the materials, and began the ritual. After a while, a mass of flesh exploded. Why did it fail? Li Fan was puzzled. He tried again, and failed again. Quote. Li Fan frowned deeply. Wait, could it be? There's already a clone in the world. Li Fan was instantly startled. Chapter 344, Unforgettable Memories. When was the clone refined? Li Fan felt like he had forgotten something extremely important. His brows furrowed, thoughts racing in his mind. But try as he might, he couldn't recall any related memories. Even scanning the storage in his mind's Dao crystal was futile. And, my cultivation technique, Li Fan suddenly realized something, his expression turning grim. Immortal sage Jicheng offered longevity treasures, with the use of the pearl of derivation as a reward. The mystical transformation of true spirits should have been derived from the pearl of derivation. I've always been cautious, so the true body wouldn't have taken such a risk personally. Thus, it should have made a clone to handle this. But, to have absolutely no recollection, is it once again the method of that venerable who causes forgetfulness? Li Fan closed his eyes in contemplation, attempting to recollect once more, but to no avail. No, that's not it. After a long while, Li Fan opened his eyes, wearing a pensive expression. Rather than saying I forgot, it's more like, the experiences of the clone were completely erased. Events that never happened naturally leave no traces. What could it be? The fear of the unknown almost prompted Li Fan to immediately seek truth, to rid himself of this influence and explore further. But he restrained himself. Regardless, I must record this. After this world's end, perhaps atop the disintegration peak, I might remember what disappeared. However, this method of vanishing from memory inadvertently is truly insidious. To prevent even the possibility of forgetting this in the future, it must be documented in advance. With this thought, Li Fan prepared to retrieve a blank jade slip from his storage ring to record his forgotten memories. What's this? Suddenly, he noticed 3 jade slips placed in a corner of his storage ring. When were these placed there? Why do I have no recollection? Li Fan blinked in slight confusion, then his heart stirred as he took out the jade slips to examine them one by one. Strangely, one of the jade slips was completely blank, with no records at all. While the other 2 jade slips, one of them had only a single Dao character written on it. The other jade slip only had the character, Source, written on it. Source of Dao, Dao of Source. What does it mean? Li Fan felt the term was very familiar, yet he couldn't recall where he had encountered it. As if shrouded in a dark cloud, Li Fan's mood inevitably grew heavy. Thinking about it now is pointless. After half a day passed, Li Fan finally shook off the influence of this powerful negative emotion. He meticulously recorded the situation where his clone clearly existed but couldn't be detected, and even certain memories were forgotten, on the blank jade slip. Then, he carefully placed the 3 jade slips back where they were originally. Although I can't remember what happened for now, judging from these 3 jade slips I prepared as reminders, I must have known about this matter. It's probably just a miscalculation of the actual impact when the event occurred, causing all these preparations to be futile. If it refers to that unknown event, then can't we deduce that after the event, not only memories related to it will be affected, but all related records will also be unable to be preserved? After calming down, Li Fan carefully pondered and vaguely inferred some clues. Since I made preparations, it means that its influence didn't exist from the beginning of Anchor Point 1 year. So, at least after I became truth, I should be able to understand what happened. Thinking of this, Li Fan felt slightly relieved. Although it's quite incredible to realize this for the first time, in this perilous world, I surprisingly feel it's somewhat natural. Li Fan shook his head, self-deprecating. Despite the unexpected turn of events, Li Fan didn't forget the purpose of leaving the city this time. To test the effectiveness of the mystical transformation of true spirits technique. With a calm mind, he gradually cleared away the distractions in his mind and began to operate the mystical transformation of true spirits. A power entirely different from spiritual energy, but seemingly rooted in it, surged from his limbs and spread throughout his body in an instant. Under the influence of this unpredictable power, Li Fan felt as if countless ants were crawling all over his body, causing unbearable itching and pain. Enduring the discomfort, Li Fan continued to operate the technique, aiming to achieve his first random transformation after successfully cultivating the technique. The pain and itchiness kept accumulating. The heat within his body continued to rise. Just when Li Fan felt like every bone in his body was about to melt, he suddenly felt his whole body relax. All the discomfort disappeared in an instant, as if he had exchanged for a brand new body. No, he had indeed acquired a new body. Summoning a water mirror in front of him, Li Fan observed his reflection. It was a face he had never seen before, and the height, demeanor, and initial impression it gave differed greatly from Li Fan's true self. If not for the fact that every movement of the figure in the mirror corresponded to Li Fan's own, he would find it extremely difficult to believe that it was himself. With a thought, he operated the technique once again. Soon after, another face appeared in the secret chamber. Like a child with a new toy, Li Fan continued to transform incessantly. With each transformation, the time required grew shorter amidst increasing familiarity. Eventually, he could complete a transformation almost in the blink of an eye. The mystical transformation of true spirits, truly unpredictable and mystical. In my opinion, it's almost like divine magic. Li Fan couldn't help but sigh after the experiment. Now, he had only just begun to cultivate this miraculous technique. Thus, the ability to transform was only available with his current chi refinement cultivation. However, he had already grasped all the essentials, and from now on, it was just a matter of accumulating practice over time. With the proficiency in multitasking granted by the divine Tao, he believed he could soon elevate the mystical transformation of true spirits to the level matching his own golden core cultivation. Surveying the messy secret chamber, Li Fan used the Grand Five Elements Annihilation Sword to erase all traces. Then, he quietly returned to Tianyu City. With a mindset of experimentation, Li Fan began searching for information related to the terms, Source of Tao, and Tao of Source, in the Tianquan Mirror. As expected, after browsing for a long time, he found nothing suspicious, only ordinary fragments of information. It seems I'll have to set this matter aside for now. Li Fan felt helpless and had to give up. It's already mid-year in Anchor Point 29. The one-year preparation period for the Tianquan Spirit Lock Array popularization plan has come to an end. It won't be long before I receive a summons from Jihongdao. Following him to set up the Spirit Lock Arrays in the subworlds, I'm afraid I'll have little freedom for quite some time. However, I have a secret pawn, the daughter of the Chief Formation Master of the 10,000 Immortals Alliance. Perhaps, in critical moments, she can play a miraculous role. Chapter 345. Demon Lord Changing Faces. Li Fan sensed it again. I can enter the fallen immortal realm again now. Since there's still some time, I should explore it again. But before that, let's see what major events have occurred in the past 6 months. Having foresight is his advantage. Every valuable piece of information could mean a great opportunity in the next life. Naturally, Li Fan wouldn't disregard this. He immediately started searching in the Tianquan Mirror. Countless strange occurrences flashed before his eyes. However, 2 things caught his attention the most. Firstly, the old fisherman, who hadn't appeared for a long time, showed up again. This time, he stayed in the Tianjin province. But unlike before, the old fisherman was accompanied by a 7 or 8-year-old girl. Dressed similarly to the old fisherman in a raincoat, she carried the fishing basket on her back, almost the same size as herself. It looked quite comical. Some bold cultivators tried to get close to the little fisher girl but were sternly rebuked by her. Although she appeared to be at the foundation establishment stage, she spoke to nascent soul cultivators with the tone of educating juniors. It's worth noting that the old fisherman has been wandering around for a long time, appearing and disappearing mysteriously, and no one has ever been able to follow him. This little girl immediately aroused the curiosity of many cultivators. The cultivators speculated about the identity of this little fisher girl, but with various guesses, there was no definite conclusion. When Li Fan saw this news, for some reason, he suddenly thought of the sun-stealing token he traded to the old fisherman back then. Sikong Yu, Li Fan squinted his eyes, speculating in his mind. When he initially obtained the sun-stealing token and learned about its origin, he had a vague guess in his mind. The creator of this token, the 38th generation heir of the sun-stealing sect, Sikong Yu, might have turned himself into the token through some secret method to survive in that extremely bloody dark era. When later cultivators attempted to integrate with the token through the sun-stealing technique, merging their body and soul with the token, she could secretly absorb power and eventually achieve the resurrection of sun-stealing. So, Li Fan has always been wary of this token. After obtaining it, he always kept it in a corner of his storage ring, without provoking it. When the fisherman demanded this item, he handed it over without hesitation. Now it seems that his premonition may indeed be correct. I wonder what method the old fisherman used to awaken it. However, after sleeping for thousands of years, it's not easy to revive, but being forced to act as a follower fisher girl, I guess the taste wouldn't be pleasant. Li Fan thought to himself, then he pondered over the second matter that he was very concerned about. In the past year, rumors have been spreading everywhere within the 10,000 Immortals Alliance. It's said that there's movement again from the long-dormant Wulao meeting. A cultivator proficient in the Tao of the Soul has reportedly quietly infiltrated the 10,000 Immortals Alliance. This cultivator's cultivation level is unfathomable, reportedly reaching the Tao integration realm 1,000 years ago. And he has abandoned his physical body, existing only with his soul. His soul is so powerful that it's no different from an ordinary physical body. Moreover, he can freely enter the bodies of other cultivators, perform body-snatching acts, and replace them. Not long ago, a tragic incident occurred in the Latu province. The city guards suddenly changed their temperament and massacred all the ordinary people under their jurisdiction. Moreover, they falsely reported that there was a spy invasion, committing bloodshed, and, under the pretext of investigating the scene details, deceived dozens of disciples from the Yanwu Hall into entering the city of Zupi. Then they displayed strength completely inconsistent with themselves, annihilating the squad of Yanwu Hall led by nascent soul cultivators in an instant. Before the cultivators of Latu province could react, they left, leaving behind a city soaked in blood, causing subsequent cultivators who rushed over to be both shocked and angry. After this, there were more than a dozen incidents where cultivators suddenly changed temperament, behaved recklessly, and committed indiscriminate killings. Yet, the perpetrators were never found. People began to connect the occurrence of these massacres with the news of the Tao integration Immortal ancestor infiltrating the Wulao meeting. Almost everyone believes that the reason why those cultivators changed their temperament was because they were possessed by the Tao integration Immortal ancestor of the Wulao meeting. And as the slaughter incidents continued to occur, the cultivators of the 10,000 Immortals Alliance also began to feel a sense of fear. After all, no one can guarantee that they won't be the next target of possession. Furthermore, they have to worry about their close friends, who may suddenly stab them in the back. The accumulation of negative emotions has led to an increasingly louder voice accusing the Yanwu Hall of incompetence. And the demand for the Tianshuan soul-locking array to be popularized as soon as possible has also become stronger. The effectiveness of the soul-locking array has been evident in the Jushan province. Although it's rare for the 10,000 Immortals Alliance to issue a public announcement explaining that the Tianshuan soul-locking array's light beams target only cultivators below the Tao integration realm. After being locked for a period of time, cultivators at the Tao integration realm can break free with their own strength. However, in the eyes of many cultivators, having some effect is better than having no countermeasures at all and passively waiting to be slaughtered. Moreover, formations can be improved and strengthened. It's not possible to deal with Tao integration cultivators now, but through continuous improvement, it should be achievable eventually, right? In any case, due to the existence of the spy from the Wulao meeting, referred to by the cultivators of the 10,000 Immortals Alliance as the Thousand-Faced Demon Lord, the public's attitude towards the popularization of the Tianshuan soul-locking array. From initial opposition to later acquiescence, it has now turned into hope and support. The popularization of the Tianshuan soul-locking array is now a trend. Not only is the official attitude resolute, but the masses also eagerly welcome it. Although there are some dissenting voices in the face of this tide, they are swiftly suppressed before they can attract attention. Meanwhile, the incompetence of the Yanwu Hall in the face of the invasion of the Thousand-Faced Demon Lord has also stirred considerable dissatisfaction among many cultivators. Some cultivators believe that the current Yanwu Hall is no longer able to adapt to the increasingly fierce competition with the Wulao meeting. It's better to emulate the existence of the Central Garrison Institute in the central hinterland and reorganize a completely new martial force organization to guard the security within the territory of the 10,000 Immortals Alliance. This idea has received strong support. The official statement of the 10,000 Immortals Alliance also expresses that they will fully consider and respect the opinions of the vast cultivators. Relevant matters are currently under negotiation, and specific measures will be announced soon. The rare proactive response from the 10,000 Immortals Alliance has greatly cheered many cultivators. They believe that this change may be a sign of better days to come. However, for cultivators like Li Fan, who truly discern some clues, at this moment, they can only maintain silence amidst a cold heart. It's truly a brilliant move. The emergence of the Thousand-Faced Demon Lord not only greatly accelerates the popularization of the Tianshuan soul-locking array. Even when the formation is fully established, it will be used even more cleverly. Spies will eventually be caught. But the Thousand-Faced Demon Lord is cunning, so no matter how hard you try, you can't catch him. Chapter 346, Fate Follows Changes. Does the Thousand-Faced Demon Sovereign really exist? This question isn't actually important. Since the 10,000 Immortals Alliance and many cultivators have already reached a conclusion, then regardless of his past. From now on, he is just a ghost wandering within the territory of the 10,000 Immortals Alliance, selecting victims at will, making it impossible for people to guard against. Anyone could be the unforgivable thousand-faced demon sovereign. And the ultimate authority to interpret his identity lies in the hands of the 10,000 Immortals Alliance, which possesses the Tianquan soul-locking array. This is the most important thing. Li Fan could almost foresee that when the soul-locking array is completely constructed, cultivators of the 10,000 Immortals Alliance will face an even more perilous cultivation environment. When it reaches that point, the situation can be considered thoroughly collapsed. As a mere golden core cultivator, I'm afraid it will be extremely difficult for me to protect myself. Perhaps by then, I can return to the truth earlier. Enemies will come when barriers are erected, and troubles will arise when defenses are heightened. The popularization of the soul-locking array is still at least more than 10 years away. Any further concerns for Li Fan at this moment are just needless worry. Take one step at a time and see how things develop. Li Fan suppressed the miscellaneous thoughts in his mind and began the ritual to enter the fallen immortal realm. Fortune bestowed Xuanwang immortal sovereign. The blurry scene in front gradually became clear. The whistling wind constantly echoed in his ears. It seemed like he was rapidly flying in the sky, surrounded by bone-piercing coldness, causing Li Fan's body to tremble slightly. This time it's actually different from Ningyuan City. We're not starting over in an egg. Li Fan, who had regained a bit of self-awareness, was somewhat surprised. But soon, he recalled the time frame when this scene took place. The little boy Shu Ke was tightly hugging the neck of the green phoenix, while Li Fan was hanging on his neck. The green phoenix rushed towards a certain direction as directed by the little boy. Isn't this the scene from the last time he left the fallen immortal realm? This feels like a real continuous drama. Li Fan felt somewhat strange. Although he lost the opportunity to endlessly explore opportunities, he didn't feel restless because of constantly repeating a certain period of time. It can be said to have advantages and disadvantages. Transforming into the divine bird greatly limited Li Fan's thinking ability. Instead of thinking too much, he simply scratched Shu Ke's hair and began to contemplate the insights he gained from the last entry into the realm. Other than the extremely powerful heavenly mandate profound light, there's also the ability to condense and gather chi luck, known as Heaven's Mandate Within Me. Squinting his eyes, Li Fan looked again at the purple-gold pillar of light soaring into the sky above Shu Ke's head. Li Fan instinctively began to absorb the strands of energy radiating outward from the purple-gold brilliance. As if swallowing the most powerful elixir between heaven and earth, the scattered golden-purple radiance entered his body, making Li Fan feel like he had immersed himself in a warm spring. He could clearly feel his spirit and physique gradually growing stronger. With a refreshing sigh, he transformed into a faint golden thread imperceptible to ordinary people and re-entered the purple-gold chi luck pillar above Shu Ke's head. So this is the heavenly mandate divine bird. Li Fan suddenly understood how Heaven's Mandate Within Me worked. Among all living beings in the world, each has their own chi luck, all different. Some sail smoothly through life, always turning bad luck into good. While others are naturally unlucky, encountering setbacks at every turn. However, chi luck is not immutable. It is extremely susceptible to external influences. Those who have been smooth sailing in the first half of their lives may suddenly encounter misfortune after certain events, causing their lives to take a drastic turn for the worse. And those who have been unlucky for most of their lives may suddenly have a change of fortune one day, becoming wealthy and prosperous. The reason lies in the fact that chi luck interacts with external factors and is extremely volatile. The weaker the original chi luck, the more so it is. People like Shu Ke, whose status is beyond description, may not be easily affected by external shocks. But every time they encounter disasters, it will deplete a bit of their original chi luck. During their daily activities, they will constantly radiate outward, consuming themselves. Over time, if there's only output and no input, chi luck naturally becomes weaker. The Heaven's Mandate Within Me ability of the divine bird is to absorb the owner's everyday emitted chi luck, nourishing itself, and then feed back the condensed chi luck to the owner. Not only can it help the owner accumulate and strengthen chi luck, avoiding consumption in inexplicable places, but it can also temporarily lend its own chi luck to the owner during times of crisis. Thus, the divine bird and its owner can be said to complement each other and mutually complete. It seems like following this kid isn't a bad idea after all. Li Fan greedily sucked in another breath of invisible purple gold chi, couldn't help but think so. Hey, kid, where are you going now? After absorbing this strand of chi luck, Li Fan felt himself grow stronger. With a thought, he immediately attempted to communicate with Shu Ke. Of course, not verbally, but silently in his mind. Wow, Xiaohe, you actually learned telepathy. Instantly, Shu Kei's voice echoed in Li Fan's mind. Xiao, hey, who are you talking about? Li Fan suddenly grabbed Shu Kei and scratched him fiercely. Ouch, it hurts. Shu Kei rubbed his head and said innocently. Shan is Xiao Hong, Green Phoenix is Xiao Qing. You're all black, so calling you Xiaohe isn't wrong, is it? Li Fan pecked him several times in a row. I am the mighty heavenly mandate divine bird. How can you use such vulgar names? Okay, Shu Kei, feeling the pain, had to compromise. Then I'll call you Xiao Zhan. Although Li Fan was still a bit unhappy, at the moment, he was incarnated as a beast, and his brain was not fully developed. With insufficient brain capacity, he couldn't come up with a better name for the time being. You still haven't answered my question, where are we going now? Li Fan asked. Seeing Li Fan acknowledge the name he gave, Shu Kei burst into silly laughter. At the same time, he answered in his mind, we're going to find Senior Luya. The whole sect is still in chaos now, all because Mr. Bai was too ruthless, scaring everyone. Many senior brothers and sisters don't want to stay in the sect anymore, feeling that there's no future. Some ran away, some escaped. Even the senior uncles and senior brothers, as well as many elders, don't know where they've gone. No one has come out to maintain order. This has led to increasingly severe chaos. It's really dangerous. If we encounter someone like Song Yang again, we might not be so lucky. So, let's go find Senior Luya. He's so strong, it's definitely safer to stay by his side. Maybe we'll even get to see Mr. Bai on the way, hee. Shu Kei's thoughts flowed quickly as he rattled off. How do you know where your Senior Luya is? Li Fan asked, somewhat surprised. Chapter 347, All-Knowing Emperor 3 Meow. Of course I know. Shu Kei's voice sounded somewhat proud. I've said it before, Senior Luya is very kind. When he brought me to the Imperial Beast sect, with the sect being so vast, he knew I was mischievous and liked to wander around. So, for the convenience of finding me, he gave me a jade pendant. I can sense my location at any time. And this function is two-way, I can also find him at any time. Actually, I know that Senior Luya was afraid I'd be bullied when I just entered the sect, so he left this jade pendant for me. As Shu Kei responded, he showed Li Fan the jade pendant hanging from his chest. Li Fan looked over and saw that the jade pendant resembled somewhat the exotic beast Senior Luya had ridden before. But looking at Shu Kei's smug look, inexplicably, a sense of annoyance arose in his heart. Then he coldly retorted, since the jade pendant is two-way, Senior Luya must have known when you approached him. Now he's with Mr. Bai, and he didn't want you to meet Mr. Bai before, so this time, he'll definitely avoid you too. Shu Kei didn't care, foolishly saying, Xiao Zhan, you're overthinking it, for sure. However, before he could finish his words, he suddenly froze. What's going on? The sensing actually disappeared suddenly. The green phoenix bird beneath him hadn't reacted yet, still flying towards the direction Shu Kei had indicated earlier. Shu Kei lamented with a gloomy face, complaining, Xiao Zhan, you're such a jinx. Good things don't work out, but bad things are spot on. Li Fan sneered and gave him a slap. Shu Kei rubbed his head, but didn't give up on finding Luya's whereabouts. His eyes lit up with an idea. Xiao Zhan, since you're the legendary Tianming Zhan bird, your abilities must be great, right? So, can you help me find Senior Luya in Mr. Bai's current location? Li Fan raised his head slightly, looking proud. Seeing this, Shu Kei immediately said many flattering words, promising to help Li Fan find 3 stems of Jingchong grass. The taste of that rare red insect grass still lingered deeply in the soul of the Zhan bird. Enticed by delicacies, coupled with Li Fan's genuine desire to try it, whether he could see that mysterious and unpredictable Mr. Bai. So, with a leap, he arrived above Shu Kei's head. Activating his innate supernatural powers, he gazed into the distance. Whether it was Luya or Mr. Bai, their aura must be different from ordinary people. Inside the Imperial Beast sect, they should stand out conspicuously. As Li Fan pondered this, the result turned out somewhat unexpected. Not far away, he did see a dazzling azure aura of aura, indeed very conspicuous. But around that blue aura, there was nothing. Could it be that Mr. Bai has already left the Imperial Beast sect? Or is this prominent aura not related to Luya? Li Fan was somewhat puzzled, but still marked the location in his mind for Shu Kei. Shu Ke was extremely excited and urged little Qing to fly quickly towards the target. The green phoenix bird also obediently followed the words of this young boy whom he had just met not long ago, carrying him tirelessly and accelerating. The location where Luya was seemed to be in a small cabin on top of a mountain. Just as Shu Ke and they were about to approach, a thin figure flew out from the mountaintop and disappeared in an instant. But Li Fan could faintly feel that the person who had just flown out seemed to have glanced towards Shu Ke's direction. "Mr. Bai," Shu Ke exclaimed, but Li Fan felt somewhat solemn. Because he saw it very clearly, there was actually no aura above Mr. Bai's head to be observed at all. To perceive aura is the Tianming supernatural power of the Zon bird clan. What kind of cultivation is it that even the Tianming Zon bird cannot observe? In the bloodline inheritance memory of the Zon bird that Li Fan was attached to, its ancestors seemed to have never encountered such a situation. Shu Ke stared in the direction where Mr. Bai disappeared, standing still for a moment. Then, still tangled, he urged little Qing to fly towards Senior Luya's cabin on the mountaintop. Flying to the mountaintop, Shu Ke couldn't wait and leapt down, rushing towards the cabin. "Senior Luya," Shu Ke pushed open the door excitedly, but was surprised to find that besides Luya, there was another person present. With a lean face and white eyebrows and beard. A sense of awe emanated from him, causing Shu Ke's body to suddenly stiffen. The white-bearded old man and Luya merely glanced at the intruding Shu Ke before continuing their previous conversation. Without avoiding Shu Ke's presence, the white-bearded old man said, "Since you've already agreed to the other party, then do as he requests." Although he came knocking on the door forcefully, it might not all be bad. Luya's expression was somewhat astonished. "Senior, what did you see?" The white-bearded old man didn't answer directly, but smiled and asked back, "Luya, do you believe in what Mr. Bai said?" Luya suddenly fell silent. The white-bearded old man shook his head. "People always make mistakes. Sometimes, openly admitting one's mistakes is not a shameful thing." But Luya bluntly said, "I only believe in my own eyes." "Many times, what you see may not necessarily be the truth," the white-bearded old man sighed softly. However, he seemed to also know Luya's temperament, not easily persuaded. So, he didn't linger on this topic anymore, but turned to say, "A great calamity is approaching, and our imperial beast sect may be hard to escape. But amidst the bleakness, I see a glimmer of hope. This glimmer of hope is related to Mr. Bai's mission, and also to this little friend here." The white-bearded old man's gaze turned to Shu Ke, who was standing still, bewildered. Luya turned to look at Shu Ke, his expression inexplicable. "None other than him." The white-bearded old man nodded. Luya shrugged. "Although senior, you are known as the all-knowing wisdom beast, Di San Miao, if the only hope of the imperial beast sect rests on this kid, it's really too far-fetched." "I don't believe it anyway." Di San Miao didn't argue, but smiled and said, "In the river of destiny, who dares to claim full knowledge? The so-called all-knowing is just a misunderstanding of me by outsiders." However, Di San Miao paused. "The fact that this kid barged in today and has a mysterious connection with Mr. Bai and you, on the contrary, makes me more confident in my judgment. After all, I only believe in my own eyes." The smile on Di San Miao's face suddenly disappeared, replaced by an extremely solemn expression. Seeing this, Luya could only nod slightly. Anyway, there is still some time before Mr. Bai's mission ends, which is enough for this kid to grow. But, what about those troublemakers in the sect? Are we really just going to let them be? Our Imperial Beast sect hasn't perished yet, right? Luya frowned, his tone displeased. "Let those who want to leave go." Di San Miao, however, showed no anger. With the great calamity looming, every additional disciple to protect will require more effort. It's not a bad idea to streamline things while we have the chance. Chapter 348. The Undying Longevity Beast. The conversation between the two in the room entered Shu Ke's ears, seemingly causing a great shock to his young mind. Eyes widened, mouth slightly agape, struggling to speak. While Li Fan wasn't as shocked by the ruthless judgment Emperor Sanmao had for the inner disciples of the Imperial Beast sect, what frustrated him considerably was the faint aura emanating from the white-bearded elder, which instilled a sense of dread from the depths of the soul into the possessed divine bird. Under the pressure of the innate superiority of the higher-ups, the divine bird's thoughts seemed momentarily frozen, with only its body trembling instinctively, unable to make any other movements. From the inherited memories of the divine bird's bloodline, Li Fan immediately understood the esteemed status of this intelligent beast among the other beasts. In the ancient era when the beast clan was not yet thriving, Emperor Sanmao had already served as the prophet of the clan, leading the clan forward with his unparalleled wisdom. He walked his own path, often transforming into human form despite being a beast. Unlike many other beasts who shunned contact with humans, he reportedly traveled in the human world for centuries, making many human friends. He urged the beasts to unite and contribute like humans. After researching many human techniques, he separately improved the cultivation methods of various races at that time, greatly enhancing the cultivation speed of the beasts. From being secluded to spreading across the world, Emperor Sanmao undoubtedly played an indispensable role in the rise of the beast clan. However, that was many years ago. Yet the face before them now was exactly the same as what the ancestors of the divine bird had seen. Generation after generation, the divine bird flourished, but Emperor Sanmao remained the same Emperor Sanmao. An intelligent beast, also a beast of longevity. Because of living long enough and experiencing enough, it possessed wisdom beyond the reach of ordinary beings. It's just that a long time ago, Emperor Sanmao seemed to have rarely appeared. Disappeared without a trace, whereabouts unknown. Never did they expect that he had quietly arrived at this imperial beast sect, which was most hated by the other beasts. It seems that Emperor Sanmao's status in the imperial beast sect is not low, considering himself as a leader. The white-bearded elder exchanged a few words with Lu Ya, then turned to look at the divine bird possessed by Li Fan. Nodding slightly, Emperor Sanmao said with satisfaction, "Being able to follow this child is also a blessing for your Phoenix clan. Perhaps, it will last longer than the other branches." Emperor Sanmao lightly stroked his long beard, plucking a strand. Then, a gleaming white light emanated from the white beard, flicked by him into Li Fan's body. The white light roamed around, wherever it passed, vibrant vitality surged. The sensation of constant strengthening was several times stronger than when Shu Kei's exposed fortune was swallowed before, almost making Li Fan want to let out a comfortable roar. After circling inside the body, the white light still didn't dissipate, just dimmed slightly. So, the next cycle began. Immersed in this warm and comforting vitality, Li Fan felt incredibly relaxed in mind and spirit, a sense of weariness flooding over him. Before falling into slumber, he only heard Lu Ya's somewhat astonished voice, "Senior, you." Emperor Sanmao's bestowal was undoubtedly a great tonic for the divine bird. Because Li Fan's journey in the fallen immortal realm, which should have lasted for over 3 months, ended abruptly and inexplicably. When he regained consciousness, he was already back in the Tianquan mirror in the real world. Although this journey was extremely short and yielded nothing. But at least Li Fan knew that when he entered again next time, it should continue from the time point after he fell asleep. With such a long setup, the eventual harvest shouldn't be too meager. Moreover, Li Fan was very curious about what the task Mr. Bai had assigned actually was. And what would be the final outcome for Lu Ya, Shu Kei, and that Emperor Sanmao. After reviewing the experiences in the fallen immortal realm in his mind once again, Li Fan pondered for a while, seeing no summoning message from Ji Hongdao, so he immersed himself in cultivation once more. 2 months later, when transformation of the mysterious and divine broke through to the foundation establishment stage, Ji Hongdao finally sent a message. Concise and to the point, not a word wasted. "Within 7 days, come to the Realm Boundary Academy to see me." Li Fan didn't immediately set off, but first inquired about Shui Mu. "Friend Shui, where are you now? Have you received Master Ji's summons?" After about a cup of tea's time, Shui Mu replied, "Friend Li Fan, I am currently in the Tianquan province. Recently, it is said that old fisherman has been staying here, and he seems to be more interested in things than before. 3 lucky individuals have already obtained benefits from him successively. So, I also wanted to try my luck. Unfortunately, luck was not on my side this time. By the time I arrived, he had already disappeared without a trace. I wanted to explore a bit more, but then I received Master Ji's message." Li Fan replied, "Opportunities and such cannot be forced. The task of building the Tianquan locking spirit array is related to our future. We cannot delay. Friend, you should return quickly. I'll wait for you in the city, and we'll go together." Shui Mu's surprised voice came immediately, "Okay, what you said is right, I'll come back right away." In the territory of the 10,000 Immortals Alliance, there were teleportation arrays everywhere, so the journey was swift. Just half a day later, Shui Mu returned to Tianyu City. Let's go. Li Fan glanced at Shui Mu, who looked a bit dusty but much more spirited than before, and nodded. Friend, I've kept you waiting. Shui Mu looked guilty. Not at all. Li Fan waved his hand, unconcerned. Friend, you just broke through to the Golden Core stage a year ago, but from observing your aura, it seems like you're not far from another breakthrough. Li Fan observed Shui Mu for a moment, somewhat surprised, and asked. Shui Mu nodded. Friend has sharp eyes. It's strange, though. I haven't put much effort into cultivation recently. Most of the time, I've been touring the wonders of the world in the nearby provinces. I haven't deliberately pursued cultivation. Advancement, but under the magnificent rhythm of the heavens and earth, my cultivation has grown significantly. But strangely, the effect of my own cultivation hasn't been as good as I imagined. He rubbed his head in embarrassment. I don't know what's going on. Suddenly, he paused, saying uncertainly, perhaps, it's because the influence of that mortal transcendence wall hasn't disappeared yet. So miraculous. What did you see on that wall? Surprised by this answer, Li Fan couldn't help but ask. As they spoke, they had already arrived outside the Realm Boundary Academy. Entering successively, there were no consecutive arrays greeting them this time. Instead, they arrived directly at a picturesque courtyard. No one was in the courtyard. Li Fan and Shui Mu found a place to sit down and continued their previous conversation. Chapter 349. One Step to God Transformation. Shui Mu took out a scroll from his storage ring and handed it to Li Fan. This is a scroll I drew based on the scenes in my memory. Although it has been revised hundreds of times, it still retains 1/10,000th of its divine charm. Even so, every time I calmly redraw it, it purifies and benefits my body and mind. I didn't realize it before, but just now, after hearing what you said, I realized. During this time, I have made rapid progress, perhaps because I often review the scenes I saw back then. Shui Mu said solemnly. Mortal transformation into God. With curiosity, Li Fan took the scroll and unfolded it. In an instant, it seemed as if there were changes in the sky. A slender figure, dressed in white clothes, looked up at the sky. The figure was so small, yet it seemed to stand opposite the entire world. In the sky, clouds continuously rolled, transforming into different shapes. Layer upon layer, they pressed down. The wind rose, lifting the clouds like snow. The white clothes fluttered, facing the pressure from the sky. The slender figure remained unmoved. Faced with the oppression of heaven and earth, he not only did not fear, but his momentum increased with time. Suddenly, he took a step forward. Then the white clouds rolled back, unable to form an army. He took another step forward. The clouds dispersed, and the sky became clear. Then, strange phenomena occurred between heaven and earth. Countless golden lights appeared, accompanied by continuously falling strange flowers. Various auspicious beasts flew from the horizon, emitting joyful cries. On the ground, flowers bloomed as if spring had arrived in the blink of an eye. That slender figure seemed to emit a light smile. Then he walked forward with his hands behind his back. With this step, he reached the sky. Merged with the vast sky, he disappeared. Shui Mu watched Li Fan in a trance and said somewhat shyly, my skills are limited, and my work may seem crude to you. What you actually saw is tens of thousands of times stronger than what I drew. But it's just the residual image of the wall of transformation into God. I really don't know how magnificent the scene was when this mortal transformed into a god. Shui Mu sighed. Shui Daoist's painting skills are impressive, making one feel as if they are there. Li Fan replied politely, but his eyes never left the scroll in his hand, staring closely at the white figure in the painting. There was some uncertainty in his heart. Although it was only a record of the shadow wall, the actual scene might be completely different. But the feeling emanating from him made Li Fan vaguely feel somewhat familiar. Mr. Bai. Li Fan had encountered this mysterious strongman several times in the fallen immortal realm. But they always passed by each other, only able to see his vague figure. Because of this, when he saw this copied painting, he recognized it at a glance. In Mr. Bai's realm, what mattered was the spirit, not the appearance. Once you've seen him, it's hard to mistake him. Moreover, Li Fan's intuition was always accurate. It was almost certain that the Tianyan province's mortal transformation wall recorded the scene of Mr. Bai's transformation from mortal to god, ascending in one step. Li Fan suddenly remembered Shu Kei's solemn vow when he saw Mr. Bai's great power and slew many exotic beasts. Now it seems that Mr. Bai may not have lied. Before separating from Shu Ke, he was indeed just a mortal. But with one sudden enlightenment, he became a cultivator of the God transformation stage. Quote, quote, although he had heard of the mortal to God transformation before. But legends were just legends after all. And when the protagonist of the story turned out to be someone he knew, Li Fan found it difficult to accept for a moment. What kind of talent does it take to achieve God transformation in one step? Thinking back on his years of hard work and planning through hundreds of reincarnations, he was only at the mid-stage of the Golden Core realm now. Li Fan couldn't help but feel a little lost. Even though this happened in the ancient era, which emphasized the unity of heaven and man and had extremely high enlightenment limits, it still exceeded Li Fan's imagination a bit. Really, the gap between people is indeed too great. But Li Fan's mind was resilient. After a moment of daze, he gradually recovered. Shaking his head inwardly, he sighed for a moment. But he couldn't help but want to personally go to the mortal transformation wall and see Mr. Bai's style. At the same time, he became more and more looking forward to the next experience in the fallen immortal realm. Taking a deep breath, Li Fan put away the painting and returned it to Shui Mu. Thank you, Taoist friend. I have gained a lot from seeing your masterpiece today. Li Fan sincerely thanked him. Shui Mu was a bit flustered. I dare not, I dare not. It was your reminder that prompted me to go to the transformation wall in the first place. Speaking of which, I should thank you, Taoist friend. You two youngsters really make people feel sour. I wonder if it's genuine or just acting. While the two were politely declining each other, a somewhat ambiguous voice suddenly sounded. Li Fan looked over and saw that the speaker was the fat man Wang Fusong he had seen in the Heavenly Academy before. Li Fan responded with some surprise instead of anger. So it's Senior Wang Fusong, I didn't expect you to still be alive. Previously, I heard Master Ji say that there was no need to worry about the incident where Dantai Dao was attacked again. I thought you had. Senior Wang Fu's relationship is indeed profound, and the junior admires it. Li Fan said solemnly. Seeing Li Fan mentioning his previous slip of the tongue again, Wang Fusong's face turned liver-colored. Kid, why are you talking nonsense again? The incident of Dantai Dao being attacked has absolutely nothing to do with me. Li Fan nodded quickly, looking like he understood and would absolutely not spread rumors. Wang Fusong almost laughed out of anger. You kid, your acting skills have really reached the pinnacle. I don't know if you're pretending to be stupid or if you're really stupid. Shui Mu looked at the two of them somewhat bewilderedly, not knowing what riddle they were playing. Just then, the voice of Jihong Dao suddenly sounded. All right, Wang Fu, you're so grown up, why bother with these juniors? Quickly bring them over, we're about to set off. Jihong Dao still had some authority over Wang Fusong. Wang Fusong dared not neglect, snorted coldly, and grabbed Li Fan and Shui Mu with his left and right hands respectively. With a flicker of light and shadow, they appeared on a flying boat. Jihong Dao was standing on the bow of the ship, waiting for them. After being put down by Wang Fusong, Li Fan and Shui Mu hurriedly saluted Jihong Dao. Jihong Dao just nodded slightly, but his eyes were fixed on the front, not knowing what he was looking at. Master Ji, what is this flying boat? After a moment, Li Fan boldly asked. Originally, the plan was to take you and the other array masters from Tianyu province to meet at the strategist hall and go to the hidden dragon cave for array construction. But I suddenly received an appointment and need to rush to the abyss of roars. There has been a little accident there and manpower is needed, so I'm taking you along. Jihong Dao said somewhat casually. Chapter 350, Devil's Sound from the Abyss. Shouting Abyss, what kind of place is that? The name itself exuded a sinister aura, prompting Li Fan to inquire. Jihong Dao turned his head to glance at Li Fan, smiling, it's no use telling you now. You'll know when we get there. Although it's a bit dangerous, you don't need to worry too much. With us old folks around, nothing major will happen. Jihong Dao evidently had confidence in himself and waved off any concerns. Since Jihong Dao spoke this way, Li Fan naturally didn't continue to inquire and retreated with Shui Mu to the side. Before long, Sheng Guanxi, the thin man Li Fan had met in the Universal Courtyard, also brought 5 others onto the ship. These 5 individuals were not part of the previous training group. They wore the standard robes of the 10,000 Immortals Alliance, had matured features, and behaved professionally. They seemed to have been on this flying ship before and were very familiar with its structure. After exchanging greetings with Jihong Dao, they went straight to the cabin. As they passed by Li Fan and Shui Mu, they nodded in acknowledgement. Shui Mu didn't immediately realize their identity and stood still. Li Fan, however, greeted them just as familiarly. As their figures disappeared from view, Shui Mu earnestly asked Li Fan through voice transmission. Li Fan, it seems you know them. Do you know their identities? Li Fan shook his head hastily, I don't know. But we're all members of the 10,000 Immortals Alliance, like a family. It's normal to greet each other when we meet. Shui Mu was dumbfounded for a moment, unsure how to retort. Fortunately, the chubby Wang Fusong came to his rescue. Let's go, don't just stand there like a fool. Almost everyone is here, so we'll probably depart soon. Wang Fusong glanced at Li Fan, snorted, and ordered. Li Fan, with the demeanor of a junior respecting his elders, followed behind Wang Fusong. Passing through the cabin corridor, Li Fan noticed that many people had already gathered on the flying ship. It seemed that not only formation masters from the array hall were present. The faintly discernible aura of killing and blood emanating from certain practitioners in certain rooms made Li Fan realize that this mission might not be as easy as Ji Hongdao had described. The two followed Wang Fusong to an empty guest cabin and sat down. Li Fan smiled and turned to Wang Fusong for advice. Senior Wang Fu, can you reveal to us the objective of our mission this time? Wang Fusong glanced at Li Fan with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. You little rascal, are you scared too? Li Fan admitted openly, of course, my courage can't compare to yours, senior. After all, you even. Stop. Wang Fusong's expression changed slightly. You, how come every 3 sentences mentioned anti-Dao? His eyes narrowed, flashing a dangerous glint as he scrutinized Li Fan carefully. After a moment, Wang Fusong suppressed the killing intent in his heart and the smile reappeared on his face. Humph, telling you won't hurt. If Director Ji didn't tell you, it's just because it's complicated to explain. Wang Fusong casually tapped the table in front of him and took a sip of the suddenly appearing hot spirit tea before his expression turned serious. On this trip, we are going to the depths of the White Mist. The depths of the White Mist. Li Fan and Shui Mu glanced at each other, slightly surprised. However, they didn't show it. Following Wang Fusong's example, they lightly tapped the table and finished the steaming spirit tea. They patiently listened to Wang Fusong's explanation. As you know, there's a open black lens bracket white mist barrier close black lens bracket that spans across heaven and earth, dividing each province. Traveling through the white mist consumes lifespan. Even passing through teleportation formations won't avoid this. So even we cultivators, if not necessary, are reluctant to move frequently. Li Fan nodded slightly in agreement. Because of this, our understanding of the white mist is extremely limited. Most people believe that the white mist barrier only exists on the original land as a dividing line. But in reality, Wang Fusong smirked, the white mist is far broader than we imagine. So, unless it's absolutely necessary, don't get any wild ideas about physically crossing it. Otherwise, you might just get lost in the vast white mist, beyond the help of even the heavenly ancestors. Shui Mu heard about this for the first time and couldn't help but feel nervous and serious. Li Fan thought for a moment, not being intimidated by Wang Fusong's words, and spoke up, although the number of cultivators physically crossing the white mist barrier each year isn't many, it's definitely not few either. It's likely that what the senior said, the vast areas within the white mist barrier, are only a tiny fraction. Otherwise, if it's really as dangerous as senior described, it would have been noticed long ago. Wang Fusong's words were suddenly halted by Li Fan's revelation, feeling a bit embarrassed. But immediately he sneered and retorted, I don't know how many cultivators have disappeared in the white mist without return, harboring the same thoughts as you. If you're not afraid of death, you can boldly try it. Although it seems only a step away, it's like a heavenly trench, impossible to cross. We call these locations within the white mist barrier, maze realms. I can't disclose the number of confirmed maze realms at the moment, but it's definitely far beyond what you imagine. Seeing Li Fan's nod of agreement, Wang Fusong stopped being stubborn, feeling relieved. He continued, the destination of our trip, Shouting Abyss, is one of the maze realms discovered a long time ago. As the name suggests, it's an area that extends infinitely downwards in space, unfathomable and endless. Every once in a while, there are inexplicable sounds of astonishment, desperate screams, and faint murmurs emanating from the depths of the abyss. Ordinary cultivators and those with unstable minds, once tempted by the sounds, may fall into demonic ways and regress in cultivation. In severe cases, they lose their sanity, transforming into inhuman monsters solely driven by slaughter. Wang Fusong seemed to recall something, a hint of fear flashing in his eyes. Because this maze realm is too bizarre, once discovered, it's heavily monitored by the 10,000 Immortals Alliance. So, due to this influence, the eternal immortal stronghold set up outside the Shouting Abyss has been forced to constantly relocate upward over the years. However, in order to contain the influence of the devilish sounds within the Shouting Abyss, that stronghold has reached its limit. So, 100 years ago, the Alliance began to experiment with special methods to counter the devilish sounds emanating from the depths of the abyss. Special methods? Could it be? Li Fan suddenly remembered something, his heart stirring. Chapter 351. The Immortal Stronghold in the Enigmatic Domain. Anchor point for 9 years, Li Fan once received a meritorious mission. Assist the Conqueror's Martial Hall of the Kong Yun Sea in clearing out the red-haired beasts on Wanlai Island. Those beasts feed on sound and reproduce rapidly. They can also merge with each other, forming monsters with strength far exceeding the average individual. After a fierce battle, the martial team successfully eradicated a certain number of red-haired beasts and completed the mission smoothly. Li Fan asked Zhang Zhengji in surprise why they didn't completely eradicate the beasts on Wanlai Island. Zhang Zhengji told him that the Conqueror's Martial Hall headquarters of the 10,000 Immortals Alliance had a mission to collect and submit a certain number of sound-absorbing treasures from various places every year. And the required quantity is increasing. At that time, Li Fan just felt that this mission was quite strange. Now it seems that it's to deal with the Roaring Abyss. Sure enough, just as this thought popped into Li Fan's mind, he heard Wang Fusong say with some emotion, "The demonic sounds coming from the bottom of the Roaring Abyss are extremely terrifying. The Alliance has tried various methods, but none can stop it. Silencing spells, soundproof materials, none of them work." It wasn't until later that a cultivator used a stone clam treasure that could absorb and emit sound, discovering the effectiveness of this type of treasure. Perhaps because these treasures have no consciousness or complex thoughts, the demonic sounds that are fatal to cultivators have greatly reduced effects on them. It's truly one thing against another. The Alliance has collected many such treasures, finally holding the line against the Roaring Abyss. And for safety's sake, the Eternal Immortal Stronghold was relocated to its original position, suppressing the Roaring Abyss. So, are we going there this time because something happened to the Eternal Immortal Stronghold? Li Fan asked. Wang Fusong shook his head. The Eternal Immortal Stronghold is guarded by a great figure and has accumulated many treasures. The defense line is almost unshakable. In fact, this incident occurred outside the Roaring Abyss. Wang Fusong was about to continue, but his expression changed slightly. He glanced out the window and ordered, "Get ready, we're about to depart. Shui, drink your tea. Crossing through the white mist consumes quite a bit of lifespan. This is compensation for you, it won't be available if you miss it." With that, he shifted slightly, sitting upright on a circular seat below him. Seeing this, Li Fan also mimicked his posture and sat properly. With a slight sensation, in an instant, it seemed like they entered another space, separating from the cabin. Shui Mu just finished drinking the spirit tea when the flying boat suddenly shook violently. He staggered, almost falling to the ground. But this sudden acceleration of the flying boat had no effect on Li Fan and Wang Fusong. Both of them looked at Shui Mu with smiles on their faces. The flying boat seemed to be continuously accelerating, and it took some effort for Shui Mu to clumsily sit on the circular seat. After Shui Mu settled down, Wang Fusong restrained his smile and continued the previous topic. Not long ago, the Alliance discovered that outside the Roaring Abyss, not far from here, there are signs of another domain about to emerge. Dealing with the Roaring Abyss itself is already difficult. If these two domains merge, who knows what will happen. So the Alliance has ordered to move the newly emerged domain here to another open space. And, outside these two domains, the Tianquan locking spirit array is being constructed for future monitoring and observation. That's the purpose of our trip, Wang Fusong said lightly. The information in these few sentences was quite substantial. Domains can move, domains can merge, Shui Mu and Li Fan asked at the same time. Wang Fusong glanced at the two and explained, domains only undergo changes in spatial structure after entering specific areas. But outside this area, everything is normal. That's the boundary of the domain. If one masters the Tao of space, naturally, they can cut and move this entire area. Although it's a bit troublesome, it's not difficult at all. Of course, such matters are handled by us old folks. We can't rely on you young people. Your task is to cooperate in building the Tianshuan locking spirit array and seal off the domain. Li Fan nodded slightly. Shui Mu, however, still seemed puzzled. Senior Wangfu, if domains can be moved, why not move that, roaring abyss away, instead of spending so much effort to suppress it? Wangfu Song smiled knowingly. Yes, why not? Shui Mu was suddenly at a loss for words, unsure how to respond. He looked deeply at Shui Mu and said slowly, who knows what even more terrifying things might emerge after moving it. It's better to suppress it honestly. At least, we're still at a manageable stage for now. Wait until the Tianshuan mirror. Just as Wangfu Song's words abruptly stopped, a chilling sensation suddenly appeared in Li Fan's heart. His body felt cold, as if something was wandering around. Meanwhile, his mind felt empty, as if something was quietly slipping away unnoticed. Shui Mu's face turned pale, and although Wangfu Song's complexion remained unchanged, the fleeting fear in his eyes didn't escape Li Fan's notice. Li Fan opened the truth panel and saw that his physiological age had unexpectedly turned 50 in a short time. Fortunately, his mental age remained steadfast, keeping him fearless. However, he couldn't show it. Li Fan pretended to be very nervous and asked, have we entered the depths of the devouring primordial white mist? Then he looked out the window. Sure enough, it was all white, nothing could be seen. Wangfu Song nodded. The location of the roaring abyss is not far from the edge of the white mist. We'll be there soon. The closer we get to the domain, the stronger the primordial white mist's ability to devour lifespan. It's okay inside this dust-crossing boat. But without protection, even 1,000 years of lifespan wouldn't be enough if you enter the domain alone. Remember to carry the Black Death Talisman with you in the domain. Otherwise, with your mere golden core cultivation, I'm afraid it will only take the time of an incense stick for you to turn into piles of bones. Wangfu Song solemnly instructed, then remembered something and added, this thing will be distributed uniformly to you before we disembark. Remember to retrieve it before leaving. Unexpectedly, the mission location this time is so dangerous. Shui Mu, who was originally not good with words, became even more silent at this moment. Although he tried to appear calm, he couldn't hide the anxiety in his heart. Li Fan also continued to display a mixture of fear and composure. Wangfu Song had finished explaining what needed to be said, and at this point, the cabin fell into silence. But the silence didn't last long. Shortly after, rustling sounds suddenly appeared in Li Fan's ears. Heal, the heavens! Li Fan's heart skipped a beat as he looked at the two beside him. Did you hear something? He asked. End. Chapter 352. Ancient Celestial Lord's palm intermittent cries, sometimes faint and sometimes clear, echoed constantly in Li Fan's ears. Ever since Li Fan noticed the existence of these sounds, they seemed to have a target to spread to. They swarmed one after another, entwining around Li Fan. In an instant, it felt like falling into a hell where evil spirits gathered, and Li Fan felt surrounded by these terrifying sounds from all directions. And he wasn't sure if it was an illusion. From these inexplicable murmurs, Li Fan seemed to always hear the words, heaven, and, doctor. And the more he thought so, the louder the sound of heavenly doctor became. Like rising tides, waves upon waves surged, wanting to completely engulf Li Fan. Just then, within the dust-crossing boat, a burst of fiery red brilliance shimmered. Above the cabin, a 12-petaled red lotus blossomed gracefully. As the lotus petals bloomed, the sounds around Li Fan suddenly cleared. At this moment, Wangfu Song's voice came somewhat belatedly. It should be just a surge of sound occasionally erupting from the depths of the abyss. There is a pure world red lotus array protecting us within the dust-crossing boat, ensuring our safety. Li Fan, back to normal, nodded at the words, but his mind was recalling the sounds he had just heard. Senior Wangfu, do the sounds from the abyssal roar abyss sound the same to everyone? Or do they vary according to each person? Li Fan asked. This question was crucial, and Li Fan stared at Wangfu Song, awaiting his answer. Wangfu Song was somewhat surprised, but after a moment of contemplation, he explained, the abyssal devilish sounds are indescribable. Once they leave the abyssal roar abyss, their nature doesn't change. However, the ability of each cultivator to endure these devilish sounds varies, naturally resulting in vastly different perceptions. The adult who guards the abyssal roar abyss year-round is said to even comprehend profound Dao techniques from these devilish sounds. Hearing this, Li Fan breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed that the howling of heavenly doctor he had heard from the abyssal devilish sounds earlier was probably just a hallucination triggered by the heavy psychological shadow left by the heavenly doctor initially, stirring up the fear deep within one's heart. Even the sound surges passing through the outer layers of the abyss were so terrifying. It's really hard to imagine what kind of terrifying situation awaits at the bottom of the abyss. No wonder the 10,000 Immortals Alliance values it so much. It seems that this mission won't be so easy. Li Fan looked at the red lotus pattern above his head, flickering between brightness and darkness, and couldn't help but think. Just as he was pondering, the dust-crossing boat suddenly trembled as if passing through some barrier, shaking violently. Li Fan looked out the window, and the white mist was no longer as thick as when he first saw it. We're almost at the Eternal Immortal Stronghold. Let's get ready to disembark. Seeing this, Wang Fusong stood up from his seat and walked out. Naturally, Li Fan and Shui Mu immediately followed suit. When they reached the bow deck of the boat, their vision suddenly cleared. Everything around was filled with dense devouring elemental white mist. The dust-crossing boat shuttled through it rapidly, yet there was no perceptible change in the surrounding scenery. However, when Li Fan looked back at the path they had come from, he could clearly see that the density of the white mist was continuously decreasing. From the outside to the inside, several distinct circles formed based on the lightness of the color. And on the dust-crossing boat, a constantly flashing and shimmering black light layer continuously kept the erosion of the white mist at bay. As the white mist thinned enough to see objects, a gigantic green stone palm suddenly appeared above Li Fan's head. Its 5 fingers were like towering pillars, and the palm lines were clearly visible. It obscured the sky, filling Li Fan's field of vision. Compared to it, the dust-crossing boat seemed so tiny. It felt like it could come crashing down on them at any moment, causing Li Fan's heart to skip a beat. Shui Mu's face turned even paler, instinctively reaching out to block. Wang Fusong was very satisfied with Shui Mu's reaction. Only then did he calmly say, "Oh, I forgot to tell you. The severed palm ahead is the Eternal Immortal Stronghold guarding the abyssal roar abyss." Hearing this, Shui Mu's movements stiffened as he lowered his hands. But he still looked at the giant palm above his head in shock, unable to speak. Li Fan squinted, carefully examining the surface of the palm. The green stone severed palm was too huge, with lines crisscrossing its surface, resembling winding mountain ranges. Interwoven and intricate, incredibly complex. It didn't look like it was artificially made. Interesting. As Li Fan continued to observe, the flying boat slowly approached the severed palm. Finally, it flew into the tear at the wrist. The intense pressure disappeared, and Shui Mu breathed a sigh of relief. "Senior Wangfu, why was the Eternal Immortal Stronghold made to look like this?" "It's really eerie," Shui Mu, who had calmed down, asked. Before Wang Fusong could respond, he was preempted by Shang Guanxi, who led another group of people. "Kid, it's not that the Eternal Immortal Stronghold was meant to be shaped like a severed palm. It's that the entire Eternal Immortal Stronghold was transformed from this severed palm," Shang Guanxi said. "How come you don't even know this common knowledge now that we've reached our destination?" "Brother Wangfu, it seems your teaching isn't quite up to par," Shang Guanxi mocked slightly. However, Wang Fusong didn't get angry, just smiled in response. "Then I'll trouble Brother Shangguan to explain it again to these 2 kids. I'm also happy to take it easy." "You," Shang Guanxi's eyes flashed with a hint of anger. But then he thought of something and did interrupt. With a cold snort, he briefly explained to Li Fan and Shui Mu the origin of this severed palm. In the vast devouring elemental white mist, there were mazes everywhere. In addition to the abyssal roar abyss where they were currently located, there were many other eerie existences. This severed palm was discovered by the 10,000 Immortals Alliance in a certain maze outside the devouring elemental mist. It seemed to have drifted here after passing through numerous barriers of white mist. After some research, the 10,000 Immortals Alliance discovered that this severed palm was actually the corpse of a fallen powerhouse. The cultivation technique of this unidentified powerhouse was extremely unique. After his death, his body not only did not decay but instead became like green stone. Extremely hard, able to withstand various magical attacks without any effect. Moreover, it was naturally able to resist the erosion of the devouring elemental white mist. In the spirit of making the most of everything, after decades of transformation, the 10,000 Immortals Alliance finally succeeded in using it as a basis to build a fortress that could freely navigate through the white mist. Alright, there's no need to be surprised. He's just a fallen ancient celestial lord. Even if he was powerful in the past, isn't he just a tool for us now? When Shui Mu was shocked once again, the voice of Ji Hongdao rang out. Ancient Celestial Lord, Eternal, Celestial Lord. Ji Hongdao's indifferent words didn't make Shui Mu's shock disappear, but instead made him more horrified. He couldn't help but exclaim. Not only him, but all the other cultivators who arrived on the deck one after another and heard this for the first time were shocked one after another. Even the Eternal Celestial Lord can fall. Some cultivators couldn't help but ask in confusion. Chapter 353. Using all living beings as material. The longevity immortal, not the eternal life immortal. Naturally, they would fall. Ji Hongdao shook his head, lightly smiling. Moreover, the owner of this broken blue stone palm is none other than the ancient immortal who achieved the position of longevity immortal through ancient methods. Achieving the position of longevity immortal through ancient methods is not as harsh as it is today, requiring the understanding of the principles of heaven and earth. Strength naturally weakens considerably. Being killed by someone, encountering calamity and perishing, all are possible. Without leaving much time for the cultivators present to be shocked, Ji Hongdao seemed to only mention a trivial matter, then proceeded to instruct, this mission is urgent, there isn't much time for rest. Today, Emperor Fu and Shangguan will familiarize everyone with the precautions within the Eternal Immortal Stronghold. We will officially begin construction tomorrow. In the first phase of the mission, outside the Abyss of Roars, we will construct the Tianshuan Locking Spirit Array. After we have completed the migration of the newly discovered maze, we will rush to construct the second Locking Spirit Array. Once the two locations are built, we can return. Oh yes. Ji Hongdao paused, then took out a small Tianshuan mirror from his bosom, projecting a beam of light above everyone's heads. Let me tell you, the mass distribution of the Tianshuan Locking Spirit Array has officially begun. Although most of you are not participating in the competition, the 10,000 Immortals Alliance will not let your hard work go to waste. Escort, transport, cooperation, every effort will be meticulously recorded and transformed into points. When the final great array is built, these points can be used to exchange for techniques and treasures within the Alliance. Moreover, the construction of each Tianshuan Locking Spirit Array will be considered a meritorious task of the highest rank. Once the formation is completed, rewards corresponding to the contributions will be given out. Real-time distribution, no delay. Before Ji Hongdao finished speaking, the cultivators present were already in an uproar. Evidently, they had just learned of this news as well. Tasks of the highest rank are usually extremely dangerous and difficult. Ordinary cultivators have no hope of completing them. And now, as long as they diligently construct the Tianshuan Locking Spirit Array, they can obtain them. How could this not drive them crazy? Ji Hongdao smiled faintly. Everyone, do you want to obtain techniques to elevate your authority level? This time, it's truly a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. If you miss this, I'm afraid in the future, the price to obtain equivalent rewards will be several times more. So, please work hard. In the midst of the excitement, Li Fan looked at the light list in the sky. Perhaps because the competition had just begun, the gap had not yet widened. The list above was constantly changing, indicating the fierce competition. There were a total of 783 names on the list. The names were very familiar, all of them were students who participated in the special training at the Universal Branch Academy. Apart from Li Fan and Shui Mu, who bottomed out with 0 points, there was also a foundation establishment cultivator named Guo Yezhong who hadn't formally participated in the formation construction for some reason. Alright, for now, put away your excitement. Save your energy for tomorrow. After a while, seeing that the atmosphere had calmed down, Ji Hongdao continued. After disembarking, make sure to carry this ink death token with you. Even within this eternal immortal stronghold, you must do so. Remember that, starting tomorrow, there will also be cultivators stationed in the stronghold to accompany you to prevent the abyssal sonic waves. The specifics will be explained by Emperor Fu and Shangguan. With that said, Ji Hongdao waved his hand, and hundreds of tokens with black light swirling on their surface appeared in the sky like lightning bolts. Then each flew to the cultivators present. Li Fan touched it with his hand, and the ink death token instantly turned into a black line, lurking around his left wrist. Before he could thoroughly inspect it, urged by Emperor Fu Song, they left the Dust Fairy and temporarily settled in the Eternal Immortal Stronghold. The stronghold was indeed the front line against the roars of the abyss, almost self-sufficient. Facilities commonly seen in ordinary provincial cities were all available here. Apart from the inability to teleport, there was even a Tianquan mirror present. However, where Li Fan and the others lived was only the outermost part of the stronghold. Judging from the size he had seen before, it probably occupied no more than a section of a finger. If they wanted to go deeper, they would be stopped by cultivators wearing green clothes. Just as the cultivators were strolling around the stronghold. On the dust ferry, Ji Hongdao was still standing at the bow of the ship, looking at the scenery inside the broken palm building. A distorted figure, like a ghost, suddenly appeared behind him. Still using enticing means, don't you know how to come up with something new? The figure spoke arrogantly, full of disdain. Ji Hongdao seemed unsurprised by his appearance, not even turning his head, just calmly saying, old-fashioned, but effective. Isn't it? Among all cultivators in the world, who can truly resist great benefits placed before them without being tempted? Even someone as noble as you, Xiaojun, if there were no gains to be had, how could you willingly guard the abyss of roars for decades without moving an inch? Xiaojun snorted coldly, not retorting. After a moment of silence, he spoke up. Being able to gain something from the abyss is my skill. Why don't you let others try? I won't mention the merits of guarding such a dangerous place. Why do we even need to construct the Tianquan locking spirit array on our side now? You and I are both well aware of what it is. We cultivators. Ji Hongdao suddenly turned around, his expression unprecedentedly serious, staring at Xiaojun. Xiaojun's words also stopped abruptly. The Tianquan locking spirit array is the trend of the times. Ji Hongdao emphasized each word, anyone who dares to oppose it is on a path of death. I advise you, Xiaojun, not to attempt to challenge the will of the law transmitters. Seeing Xiaojun still looking displeased, Ji Hongdao sighed and persuaded, the situation is urgent now, to the point where there is no time to lose. For some reason, the heavens and earth suddenly lifted the restrictions on cultivation, seemingly throwing caution to the wind, as if they want us all to perish together. At the five elders' side, after numerous attempts, they still couldn't locate the whereabouts of the law transmitter. They are getting restless. The law transmitters have also observed signs of the reversal of the principles of heaven and earth. What that signifies, I believe you are well aware. At this moment, only with the Tianquan locking spirit array, using the lives of half the creatures in the Xuanwang realm as materials, can we get through this difficult time. Then we can slowly search for a way out of this predicament. Xiaojun obviously couldn't accept Ji Hongdao's words. He retorted, using all living beings as ants, how do you know you're not one yourself? Ji Hongdao shrugged it off, we are naturally above all living beings. Xiaojun snorted coldly, perhaps. Let's wait and see. With that, his figure shook and disappeared. Chapter 354. Formation building difficulty. Ji Hongdao seemed oblivious to the disappearance of the other party and continued on as if talking to himself. What young master should be concerned about is simply being trapped within the Tianquan locking spirit array, nothing more. In terms of safety, there's no need to worry. As the 10,000 Immortals Alliance has always proclaimed, cultivators who have achieved Dao integration have already surpassed the capabilities of the Tianquan locking spirit array. With young master's strength, you shouldn't feel fearful towards a mirror array, right? If a bit of freedom can be exchanged for sufficient benefits, I believe young master would be more than willing. Beneath the abyss, beyond the mist, isn't young master curious about what lies there? After Ji Hongdao finished speaking, the distorted figure of the young master reappeared on the dust-crossing boat. Without a word, he just stared coldly at Ji Hongdao, waiting for his next words. Ji Hongdao wasn't surprised by his departure and return. Once the Tianquan locking spirit array is fully constructed, the Tianquan mirror will also undergo another refinement. By then, there might be a great chance to resolve the unfinished matters from 200 years ago. Furthermore, if the refined Tianquan mirror wants to advance further, apart from encroaching on the territory of the Five Elders' Council, it will inevitably explore beyond the boundaries. As a breakthrough point, the devouring origin white mist will naturally not give up easily. As long as it expends its energy, the devouring origin white mist will surely be unable to stop it. It's just a matter of how much time it will take. What young master needs to do is to patiently wait. So many years have passed, does it matter now? Young master seemed unaffected by Ji Hongdao's words, his voice tinged with sarcasm. Ji Hongdao, you really haven't changed at all. Without waiting for a response, his figure disappeared once again. Ji Hongdao slowly turned his head, looking back at the busy cultivators within the distant immortal stronghold, a faint smile playing on his lips. The next day, Li Fan's arduous task of commanding the construction within the devouring abyss officially began. Aside from Shui Mu, the formation masters responsible for collaborating to construct the Tianshuan locking spirit array included 5 cultivators from the Tianyu province formation pavilion. Unlike in ordinary provinces where they only needed to consider the construction of the array, here, outside the devouring abyss, building the locking spirit array was extremely challenging and required the combined efforts of multiple departments. First, the garrison stationed at the Eternal Immortal Stronghold, known as the Azure Mystery, under layers of protection, painstakingly carved out a blank passage in the white mist where formations could be laid. Subsequently, cultivators from the Tianji Pavilion stepped forward to select suitable positions within the passage. Cultivators from the Martial Hall, in coordination with the Azure Mystery Garrison, swiftly constructed dozens of footholds before reclaiming lost territory within the white mist. These footholds became resting places for Li Fan and his group after each formation deployment. In order to increase construction efficiency, at the suggestion of the experienced formation master Do Xingxi, the locking spirit array enveloping the devouring abyss adopted a method of simultaneous construction with multiple points of blossoming. The 7 formation masters each began expanding outward from a different direction, eventually converging the outer perimeter formations. Then, they constructed the central core formation inward. Finally, after everything was completed, they placed the central formation pivot and performed the final debugging. The plan had no major issues, but the actual construction process was extremely arduous. Even Li Fan, known for his toughness, was almost exhausted by the process of building the formation. For instance, in order to set up formation nodes within the white mist, the devouring origin white mist had to be expelled first. The vacuum zones created by the Azure Mystery Army were not sustainable. Before the white mist returned, Li Fan had to race against time to complete the production of a small formation node, which would later connect to other formation structures. If a mistake or accident resulted in only half-finished work within the designated time, Li Fan had no choice but to temporarily retreat in the face of the surging devouring origin white mist. It was as if all previous efforts had been in vain, and they would have to start over again next time. Furthermore, the previously constructed formation nodes, submerged in the thick white mist, would require Li Fan to risk his life, accompanied by several cultivators, to venture into the mist for inspection if any maintenance was needed. Not to mention, throughout the entire process, they had to constantly guard against the invasion of the abyssal demonic sounds. Most of the time, the eruption of demonic sounds followed a tidal pattern, with a predictable rhythm provided by the Azure Mystery Army to allow Li Fan and his team to evade. However, there were also unexpected situations where a sudden surge of demonic sounds occurred. Although the position where Li Fan was constructing the formation was already outside the devouring abyss, the demonic sounds passed through the Eternal Immortal Stronghold, and most of their power had been absorbed. But when facing a full-on onslaught of demonic sounds, Li Fan truly felt what it was like to be a flame extinguishing in a storm. The resentful, sharp, and terrifying sounds surrounded him, threatening to cloud his senses. At one point, the danger was so severe that even the protective energy of truth decreased by several percentage points. Fortunately, the Azure Mystery Army was professional in dealing with the abyssal demonic sounds. During these critical moments, they remained calm and composed. They guarded Li Fan in the center while each took out treasures capable of devouring sound. One such treasure was a peculiar black stone riddled with holes, bearing only a faceless figure with 2 ears. There were also green grasses that danced with the sound, among many other varieties. Li Fan even encountered the red-haired exotic beasts from the myriad Sound Island several times. The effects were extremely significant. Once activated, the overwhelming demonic sounds would immediately disappear. However, Li Fan keenly observed that after devouring a certain amount of demonic sound, these exotic beasts and treasures seemed to undergo some kind of transformation. The beasts became more restless and difficult to control, while the treasures occasionally emitted eerie sounds on their own. Therefore, the Azure Mystery Army generally replaced these treasures periodically. When the reserves were depleted, they needed to replenish supplies at the Eternal Immortal Stronghold. In addition to sound-suppressing treasures, there were also consumables like the Black Death Talisman, which sustained the stronghold and allowed cultivators to survive in the devouring origin white mist. If, for some reason, the provisioning was delayed, the construction would be forced to halt. In short, constructing the Tianshuan locking spirit array within the vast white mist was many times more difficult than in ordinary provinces. Perhaps for this reason, despite the slow progress, Li Fan's ranking on the gold list hadn't fallen far behind. But what was more eye-catching than the top performers was the last place among the 783 cultivators. The Golden Core cultivator, Guo Yezhong. It had been nearly a year since the official start of the grand competition, yet his score remained at 0, unmoving. He was the only one on the entire list like this, making him stand out more than the first place. Cultivators speculated one after another that Guo Yezhong either disappeared and was trapped somewhere or he had simply defected. Chapter 355. Lost Anchor Point. Inside Anchor Point, Li Fan looked at the golden list projected by the Tianshuan mirror. Open corner bracket. This Guo Yezhong is quite an interesting character. If there isn't a special reason, then he's blatantly causing trouble under everyone's gaze. This is practically slapping the face of the 10,000 Immortals Alliance. Recalling the ordinary appearance of Guo Yezhong during the initial training, Li Fan couldn't help but marvel. If he still has 0 points at the end of the competition, I'll respect him as a man. Once again, a faint murmuring of resentment echoed in his ears, something Li Fan had grown accustomed to over the past year. He calmly lit a glass lamp inside the room, and eerie black flames illuminated, instantly dissipating the abyssal noise. This silencing glass lamp is really useful, Li Fan couldn't help but praise. The silencing glass lamp, a new type of sound-suppressing treasure delivered by the Martial Hall 2 months ago. Hailing from the Western Ethereal Province. After igniting the silencing cord within the lamp, it emitted black flames that turned all surrounding sounds into nothingness. Simple to use, with outstanding effects. Moreover, unlike other treasures that absorb demonic sounds, it doesn't risk mutation after prolonged exposure. This lamp remains unaffected until it burns out completely. It can be extinguished when not in use, extending its lifespan. Among all sound-suppressing treasures, the silencing glass lamp is the most outstanding. Unfortunately, it's said that the critical component, the silencing cord, requires special craftsmanship, making production cycles long and extremely precious. So only Li Fan, Shui Mu, and other array masters would carry it with them. Under the Qingshan army, it's only brought out in times of crisis. However, Li Fan lighting the silencing glass lamp at this moment isn't extravagant. Since 15 days ago, when the sudden surge of abyssal sounds erupted, this anchor point, along with other points in the eternal immortal stronghold, lost contact. Communication talismans, spell transmissions, and even the Tianshuan mirror couldn't connect with the outside world. In fact, the list Li Fan lazily glanced at just now was frozen data from before the surge erupted. According to the Qingshan veteran and Yuanying cultivator Cold Yingyi, the strength of this surge is unprecedented, occurring once every 100 years. Based on Cold Yingyi's experience, the duration of the abyssal surge is almost directly proportional to its power. The sudden eruption of the surge was beyond everyone's expectations. The resources within the point, including the vital Black Death talisman that sustains survival in the devouring white mist, are running low and need timely replenishment. So, Cold Yingyi, along with 3 subordinates, braving the risk of falling, returned to the eternal immortal stronghold to seek supplies during the empty period after the abyssal surge erupted. However, they haven't returned yet, although Li Fan was a bit puzzled why he encountered the once-in-a-century abyssal surge. But according to the current situation, the point is still relatively safe, so there's no need to panic. It's just that under the dual influence of the surge and the white mist, not only communication but even spiritual energy has become chaotic. Unable to concentrate, forcing cultivation would cause irregular movement of spiritual energy in the body, damaging qi and blood. Unable to cultivate, even the diligent Li Fan became idle. He had also tried to perform rituals to enter the fallen immortal realm. However, the connection with the realm is too weak within this white mist. Several attempts failed, leaving Li Fan dizzy and shaken. So he had no choice but to give up. The only way to pass the time is to chat with other cultivators in the point. However, as time passes, seeing the dwindling resources in the point and no sign of Cold Yingyi's return, everyone's mood becomes heavy, and idle chatter gradually diminishes. The black flames flicker and dance incessantly, casting a somewhat gloomy shadow on Li Fan's face. Could it be that this world is coming to an end right here? After staring blankly for a long time, such thoughts occasionally pop into his mind. He takes a deep breath, habitually activates the Xuanwang heart refinement mantra, suppressing stray thoughts. With nothing else to do, Li Fan decides to devote all his attention to practicing this refining mantra. Ever since reaching the qi condensation stage, although he had turned the Xuanwang heart refinement mantra into a breathing-like instinct, there's still a difference between wholeheartedly comprehending and instinctively practicing. At this moment, it's also the first time in a long time that Li Fan earnestly practices the refining mantra. When he was still immortal, the clear heart mantra was his hope to break the barrier between mortal and immortal, so he could endure sleepless nights and persevere in bitter cultivation for years. But when he broke through to the foundation establishment stage, and the clear heart mantra transformed into the refining heart mantra, its effectiveness became somewhat questionable. Unable to elevate even a shred of cultivation, its apparent function is only to suppress and crush the miscellaneous thoughts in the mind. In today's cultivation world, where character isn't highly valued, it's almost useless. Moreover, Li Fan's willpower is exceptionally strong, and he hardly ever encounters mental disturbances. So for Li Fan, the efficacy of the refining heart mantra is almost negligible. If it weren't for his intuition and the ranking of the refining heart mantra as the first technique in the anchor point panel, it indirectly indicated the value of the mantra, Li Fan might have abandoned it long ago. After all, no matter how powerful a dragon-slaying technique is, if there are no dragons in the world, it's just a useless skill, not worth wasting time on. Refine the heart, refine the heart. How to refine, I already know like the back of my hand. But what to refine into, what's the ultimate goal, I have no clue. Perhaps this is why my progress in practicing the refining heart mantra has always been inconsistent over the years. What am I refining for? This question may be too profound. Even Li Fan, who considers himself to have decent insight, momentarily fell into a dilemma. Time passes slowly in this process. There are limited effects to fumbling in the dark. On the 36th day after the eruption of the abyssal surge, Li Fan, who had been unable to find an answer, temporarily stopped practicing. He simply strolled around the point, listening, observing, feeling, and contemplating. Compared to a dozen days ago, changes quietly occurred within the anchor point in a short period of time. The enclosed environment, the unknown future, the occasional onslaught of abyssal sounds. The gradually depleting survival resources. As the cultivators in the point lived through each day feeling like years, an inexplicable emotion began to slowly breed in their hearts. Although it hasn't reached the point of complete despair yet, Li Fan, who can see through people's hearts, was the first to sense it. Apart from me, 3 Yuanying stage cultivators, 6 foundation establishment stage cultivators. My strength is the weakest, but if I play the pig to eat the tiger, sit back and reap the benefits, it shouldn't be a problem in the end. This was the thought that first popped into Li Fan's mind. Chapter 356, Reversing the Xuanwang Heart Refinement Mantra. But then, as Li Fan sought answers regarding heart refinement, a flash of insight crossed his mind. A clarity emerged, observing like a passerby, analyzing with reason. Is this my instinct? Facing such a crisis, some might choose to risk entering the white mist, seeking a slim chance of survival within the dire situation. Some might opt to kill their allies to strengthen themselves, using scheming methods to eliminate others first. While some would rather die than harm their companions. And I, subconsciously, choose to hide and wait, silently reaping the benefits after others finish their strife. Quote. This is the optimal strategy based on the current situation, also influenced by my past experiences. Each person's choice is different. In my view, there's no superiority or inferiority in character. This is the essence of human nature. Heart refinement, heart refinement. Li Fan pondered, murmuring to himself. Forgetful of the imminent crisis outside the stronghold of anchorage, forgetting the impending peril within the stronghold. As if ensnared in a trance, completely immersed in thoughts, not even the minor assaults of the demonic sounds could affect him. Time passed swiftly in Li Fan's contemplation. Thus, it was the 50th day after the outbreak of the upheaval. Lang Yingyi still hadn't returned, striving to prolong her endurance as much as possible. After discussion, the group decided to abandon most of the area within anchorage, only retaining some basic structures. This way, the consumption rate of the annihilation black light could be reduced by nearly half. Although the area for activity decreased significantly. Compared to having more time alive, squeezing a bit was insignificant. But the once familiar group now seemed slightly more guarded towards each other. They maintained a courteous facade outwardly, but what they were truly thinking remained known only to themselves. Undercurrents surged, hidden intentions lurked. When Li Fan noticed the gradually unsettling atmosphere, he finally began to awaken from his daze under the instinctual alertness of his body. With a slight sweep of his senses, Li Fan understood the current situation. From ancient times to the present, such a scenario of being trapped in a dilemma, mutually killing for survival, was not uncommon. Even Li Fan himself, upon understanding his current predicament, felt the emergence of killing intent. This killing intent was his own will, not belonging to distractions. Even the Xuanwang heart refinement mantra couldn't eliminate it. Li Fan carefully pondered the incessant thoughts surging in his mind. Survival is a human instinct. Killing for survival is following one's will. Following one's will, following one's will. Suddenly, Li Fan's mind froze, repeatedly chanting this phrase inwardly. After a long while, a strange light flashed in his eyes. Heart refinement, always smooth sailing. How can it truly refine the heart? To refine the Tao heart, perhaps one needs to endure adversity. Adversity, opposition, as if lightning piercing through the mist. In an instant, Li Fan understood something. To attain longevity, one must defy the laws of heaven and earth. And to refine the Tao heart, one must defy one's true intentions. Perhaps I've been cultivating wrongly all this time. Li Fan's eyes gradually brightened. To act as one pleases, to shatter all distractions, at best, it only reaches the level of the clear heart mantra. To truly cultivate the Xuanwang heart refinement mantra, one must refine the heart itself. To resist one's instinctual choices. At this thought, Li Fan felt a sudden clarity, sweeping away the knots in his heart. The operation of the heart refinement mantra became several times faster than before. It seems my accidental speculation was indeed correct. Reversing the Tao heart refinement. This method of cultivation is quite peculiar indeed. In this crisis of anchorage, if one wants to refine the heart through this method, they cannot act according to their instinctual thoughts. It's best to do the opposite. The greater the difference from one's true intentions, the more torment one's heart endures, and the more remarkable the effects of the heart refinement mantra cultivation. So the best choice should be. Li Fan's thoughts swiftly turned, and in an instant, he made a decision. And the heart refinement mantra, operating smoothly without hindrance, affirmed his speculation. However, is it worth it to do so? In the evaluation of the anchor point, the Xuanwang heart refinement mantra is still below the cloud-water illusion technique. After pondering for a moment, Li Fan made a decision. Not long after, in the conference hall of Anchorage Base, Li Fan convened the crowd and raised his doubts. Feasibility of forcibly returning to the eternal immortal stronghold. Master Li, why do you ask about this? Questioned He Chen, a guardian soldier from the Qingxian sect, with some confusion. However, he immediately realized and thought Li Fan wanted to send someone for help again. His expression turned slightly unpleasant, but he truthfully replied, in recent days, not only has the annihilation black light shown no signs of weakening, but it has also been escalating. With our current strength, if we want to cross the white mist amidst the annihilation black light, I'm afraid. He Chen shook his head repeatedly. Another cultivator named Kong Yu from the Martial Hall also directly negated, absolutely not. I know the strength of Captain Lang. If even she failed to seek help, we have no chance of success. It's better to wait until the annihilation black light weakens before making a decision. The others also advised one after another. Let's wait a little longer. Maybe Captain Lang will return soon. Yeah, Master Li, it's better not to make decisions hastily. As they say, there's strength in numbers. Although our manpower in the stronghold is limited, we can still support each other. If we split up, once we encounter any unforeseen circumstances, we might be at a disadvantage. Even cultivators within the base who cooperated in the construction of the formation, even if they were in the foundation establishment stage, still addressed Li Fan as Master. Although Li Fan had always claimed that his proficiency in formations was ordinary and he didn't deserve the title of Master, he vehemently declined. But it couldn't change the way these people addressed him. Over time, he could only silently accept it. At this moment, seeing that all the cultivators had opposing opinions, Li Fan secretly thought, actually, my thoughts are the same as yours, but unfortunately, I have to conduct an experiment. I can only go against the grain. But he didn't argue with them, just waited until everyone quieted down, then looked at them seriously. When the cultivators began to avoid his gaze, Li Fan spoke slowly, Gentlemen, let's be frank. Before the annihilation black light, a round trip from Anchorage Base to the eternal immortal stronghold took only 2 or 3 days. Even with the current terrifying situation, it's extremely difficult. If everything goes smoothly, the round trip would take at most 10 days. If Captain Leng doesn't return soon, the result might be some mishap, with little hope of survival. For us cultivators, struggling between life and death is common. There's no need to be taboo about it. However, Li Fan paused slightly, attracting the attention of all the cultivators. With a solemn expression, he said, "We are all brothers and sisters of the 10,000 Immortals Alliance. If we die in a battle with the 5 Elders Union, it can be considered a fitting end without regrets. But if we perish in mutual slaughter, I'm afraid I won't rest in peace. To avoid such a situation, I believe we should seek help from the Eternal Immortal Stronghold again before our supplies run out." Just as the brothers of the Qingshan sect said, this sudden attack by the Annihilation Black Light is unprecedented in intensity. The Eternal Immortal Stronghold is probably too busy to send reinforcements now. In a dire situation, waiting to die is not as good as taking a chance. Li Fan's words were resolute, but the cultivators present showed strange expressions upon hearing them. Everyone understands the reasoning, but the strongest within Anchorage Base, Captain Leng Yingyi, has already encountered unexpected events within this Annihilation Black Light. Who can guarantee that they can accomplish what even Leng Yingyi couldn't? Staying inside the base, one can still eke out a living and survive a while longer. But once outside the base, facing the white mist and the black tide, it's likely an immediate death sentence. What you, Li Fan, are saying so resolutely, isn't it an attempt to incite us to our deaths? Could it be that you would risk your life and personally take action? All the cultivators present thought so. However, it hadn't reached the point of open confrontation yet. They glanced at each other, and Kong Yu cleared his throat, intending to persuade again. However, what Li Fan said next made them all stand up in astonishment. Captain Leng, in order to protect us all, has probably already perished within the Annihilation Black Light. I have long been hesitant. I also know seeking help is extremely perilous. If any of you were to fall because of me, I would be even more ashamed to face everyone. Alone, I will go to the Eternal Immortal Stronghold to seek help. If I don't die, I will surely find a way for you all." Li Fan's words were decisive, his expression determined. Kong Yu, He Chen, and others never expected this young formation master to make such a decision. They looked at each other, doubting if they had misheard. But seeing Li Fan's firm gaze and expression, they had no more doubts and were instead shocked. As the master who built the Tianshuan Locking Spirit Formation, Li Fan, although only in the foundation establishment stage, held the highest position within Anchorage Base. Because all the cultivators present, whether from the Qingshan sect or other departments like the Martial Hall, came here to assist Li Fan in building the formation. If he were to insist on sending out more cultivators for help, citing, the construction of the Tianshuan Locking Spirit Formation cannot be delayed, and if I were to fall, it would inevitably delay the progress of the formation, then in the end, most of them would have to comply. But now, he didn't do that. Instead, he voluntarily took on this almost suicidal mission to seek a way out for everyone. Putting personal life and death aside, selflessly. Is there really such a person in the world? Isn't this what the sages of ancient times were like? After spending so much time with him before, they couldn't believe they hadn't noticed. It seems that only in times of life and death can one see a person's true nature. And as they recalled their own despicable thoughts, they couldn't help but feel ashamed. Under this self-reproach, they earnestly tried to persuade him. Master Li, why go this far? Although the situation is dire, it's not to the point where you need to risk everything. Yes, Master, please think twice. Dealing with both the Annihilation Black Light and the White Mist is too dangerous. The odds are against you. Facing everyone's dissuasion, Li Fan resolutely said, "My mind is made up, you needn't say more. You've been in the abyss of roaring depths for years, so you have rich experience in surviving amidst the Annihilation Black Light and the White Mist. If you really care, why not tell me all the precautions I need to take on the road, so I have a better chance of coming back alive?" Li Fan said nonchalantly. The others pretended to be reserved and tried to persuade him again, but seeing that they couldn't change Li Fan's determination, they could only sigh. While feeling relieved, they also eagerly shared their survival experiences in the abyss of roaring depths. Li Fan listened attentively and remembered them all. Then, carrying the supplies needed to survive 20 days alone in the white mist, under the reluctant gazes of everyone, he set foot on the lonely road to the Eternal Immortal Stronghold. It is worth mentioning that perhaps moved by Li Fan's righteousness, He Chen, a guardian soldier from the Qingshan sect, decided to accompany him. However, after praising the other's noble intentions, Li Fan still refused his kindness. In the other's eyes full of admiration and touched emotions, Li Fan put on the annihilation black light symbol, identified the position of the broken palm immortal city in the vast white mist, and turned into a stream of light, disappearing into it. The other cultivators in Anchorage Base watched Li Fan's disappearing figure, their faces showing various expressions. I never expected that in today's cultivation world, there would still be such a person of high integrity. It's truly embarrassing for us. I've lived for 348 years. It's only today that I've seen such a person, which is a great regret. If Master Li doesn't die, from now on, I will surely look up to him. After a moment of silence, everyone couldn't help but express their heartfelt admiration. HMPH. Only He Chen looked disdainful, gave everyone a disdainful look, and left in a huff. The faces of the others were more or less embarrassed. Like birds and beasts dispersing. Chapter 357. New Domain Beyond the Abyss. Fearless in the face of death, sacrificing oneself for others. If it weren't for my open black lens bracket truth close black lens bracket, the ability to start anew at any time, I would never make such a choice. It truly leaves a sour taste in one's heart. In the vast sea of mist, Li Fan deployed the purple sky divine thunder escape, transforming into a purple stream of light, swiftly heading towards the eternal immortal stronghold. The stifling and depressive feeling lingered in his heart for a long time. And the previously unstoppable Xuanwang heart refinement mantra unexpectedly operated extremely slowly. It was like a heavy millstone, sucking in the inner thoughts and slowly grinding them away. Unlike before, where Li Fan's incorrect cultivation methods would ruthlessly crush everything. At this moment, the heart refinement mantra refined these rebellious emotions generated from going against the Tao heart, transforming them into strands of coolness that flowed into Li Fan's body and mind, nourishing him. The cool sensation slightly relieved his restless mood. Reversing the Tao heart is actually actively seeking the difficulty in understanding the mind. This naturally made Li Fan, who had always been willful, feel extremely uncomfortable. Fortunately, the Xuanwang heart refinement mantra did not disappoint Li Fan. Sensing the effect of the coolness on his body, Li Fan's mind suddenly shook. This feeling, it's so similar to when I took the open black lens bracket mind horse close black lens bracket back then. Before, the clear mind mantra could strengthen the divine sense, and now the correct cultivation of the heart refinement mantra can actually strengthen the soul. Li Fan's heart was suddenly filled with waves of shock. No wonder its cultivation level is even higher than the cloud water dream technique, which is a Tao integration level technique. Methods that strengthen the divine sense, I've seen one or two of them in the special exchange list of merits in the Tianquan mirror. But those that can strengthen the soul, it's truly unheard of. The soul is internal, and the divine sense is external. If the soul becomes stronger, the divine sense will naturally also become stronger. The divine sense is like muscles, which can be continuously strengthened through postnatal training and cultivation. But the soul is like bones, predetermined at birth. Only when one's own realm undergoes a breakthrough, which is almost a change in life form, or by using treasures like the open black lens bracket mind horse close black lens bracket, can it be strengthened. Initially, the nascent soul cultivator Zhang Ziliang also said that the open black lens bracket mind horse close black lens bracket that can strengthen the soul is extremely precious. However, as good as the mind horse is, its enhancement effect is limited. But the Xuanwang heart refinement mantra's enhancement of the soul has no apparent limit. As long as one continues to reverse the Tao heart, it seems that the soul can endlessly strengthen. It's worth noting that when the soul becomes strong enough, it can be directly used as a means of annihilation against enemies. For example, the extremely terrifying thousand-faced demon ancestor officially announced by the 10,000 Immortals Alliance, discarded his physical body and directly existed as a soul. Relying on his powerful soul, he freely engaged in body snatching. As I cultivate the Xuanwang heart refinement mantra and continuously strengthen my soul, one day, even if the thousand-faced demon ancestor truly exists, he may not be my opponent. Moreover, open black lens bracket truth close black lens bracket and I are actually one. After each reincarnation, everything in the world returns to the chosen anchor point. Only my changes remain. Even if I choose to retain nothing, it's still the same. When I was still immortal before, my will became stronger with each reincarnation. Eventually, I could even control the Tian boat with a mortal body. This is the proof. Willpower, soul, doesn't this mean that everything in the world returns to its original state with each of my choices? And my soul, on the other hand, continues to grow stronger. One day, even if I choose not to retain my cultivation, just relying on a powerful soul would be enough to crush everything. The more he thought about it, the more unbelievable Li Fan felt. The Xuanwang heart refinement mantra can be called a heaven-defying technique, yet it's hidden within the commonplace Xuanwang clear mind mantra. What is this? Instinctively, Li Fan felt that there must be some conspiracy hidden within. With doubts in his mind, after some struggle, Li Fan still decided to continue cultivating. With such a technique right in front of me, I simply can't give it up. Even if there are any tricks, the enhancement of my soul is real. If the hidden hand behind the scenes can truly ignore the influence of open black lens bracket truth close black lens bracket, then so be it. If not, then no matter how many schemes there are, they are useless in front of open black lens bracket truth close black lens bracket. With a decision made in his heart, Li Fan suddenly felt relieved. The actual effect of the Xuanwang heart refinement mantra far exceeded his expectations. But this method of reversing the Tao heart is somewhat tortuous. Li Fan vaguely felt that it's not as simple as saying things that contradict the Tao heart to cultivate. One must integrate knowledge and action, actively acting against the Tao heart. Only then can it be turned into nourishment for the soul. This is also why he ventured alone into the white mist. For others, the combination of the demon tide and the devouring origin white mist is indeed extremely dangerous, a place where one might risk their life. Whether facing the white mist or the demon sounds, if I really encounter any fatal danger, I have time to calmly activate open black lens bracket truth close black lens bracket. Overall, the benefits of this choice far outweigh the risks. Instead, the 10,000 Immortals Alliance territory, which seems to have no risk at ordinary times, is fraught with danger if one wants to reverse the Tao heart. If one is careless, they may provoke the existence of Tao integration level experts. As Li Fan pondered, he flew towards his destination. With the Black Death symbol protecting him, keeping the devouring origin white mist at bay, Li Fan's only concern was the occasional assault of the demon tide. Whenever murmurs and whispers reached his ears, as a precaution, Li Fan would stop flying. He would then light the extinction luminous lamp and wait for the demon sounds to weaken before setting off again. Although surrounded by dangers, under Li Fan's cautious approach, he proceeded safely all the way. Soon, Li Fan had been flying in the white mist for more than 2 days. The 5 elements' power within his body formed a unity, so he didn't have to worry about spiritual power depletion. However, Li Fan's expression gradually became serious. If the threat is only at this level, Leng Yingyi couldn't possibly have an accident. What has he encountered by delaying his return? And where is this increasing sense of unease in my heart coming from? Li Fan gradually became vigilant, releasing his divine sense to probe the surroundings. However, within the fog sea devoid of the demon tide, it was silent. After searching for a long time, he still couldn't find the source of the threat. Li Fan could only adapt and continue flying towards the direction he sensed eternal immortal stronghold. 2 more days passed like this. Li Fan, who was flying swiftly, suddenly stopped. His face turned unsightly. Finally, I understand why Leng Yingyi hasn't returned. So that's it. At his speed, flying intermittently. Originally, it should have taken no more than 2 days to reach the eternal immortal stronghold. But now, 4 days have passed since Li Fan left the Jiaxu base. In his perception, the eternal immortal stronghold is indeed not far ahead. However, despite the short distance, no matter how he flies, he can't cross it. Clearly it seems to be just a short distance away, but it's like a heavenly chasm that I can't cross. We call these locations within the white fog barrier, maze. Wang Fusong's words echoed in Li Fan's ears. He temporarily gave up flying and stood in the void, his expression changing constantly. Unbeknownst to anyone, a maze has unwittingly formed on the path between the Jiaxu base and the eternal immortal stronghold beyond the abyss. Silent and unknown, Leng Yingyi must have gotten lost in this maze. Now, it's the same for me. Looking ahead, Li Fan seemed to see a huge green stone palm not far away. But he couldn't reach it. A short distance but a world away. Li Fan sighed softly. However, although he inadvertently fell into a desperate situation, Li Fan would not immediately use open black lens bracket truth close black lens bracket. There are still many unfinished matters in this world, so giving up so easily would be a pity. This also fits Li Fan's character of never giving up until the Yellow River runs dry. So Li Fan decided to see if he could find a way to cross this newly formed maze before his resources were depleted. After all, a maze is ultimately just an extremely vast space. It's not an absolute death trap. Backquote. Chapter 358. Mist covers the cemetery. Li Fan recalled the various anecdotes about the maze that Emperor Fuqi had recounted. Some are purely vast and boundless spaces, devoid of any other existence. While some are like the roaring abyss, hiding many strange and dangerous things. But everything is concealed in the vast white mist, and cultivators who mistakenly enter it are as blind as if their eyes were open, making it extremely difficult to perceive the whole picture. The supplies I brought can last for about 15 days. Whether I can cross this maze depends on the circumstances of my fate in this world. Gathering his thoughts, Li Fan did not continue to advance in the direction of the eternal immortal stronghold. Instead, he marked it as front, and flew downward in the opposite direction. In the usual white mist barrier, there is land present. It's just a flat and silent land, with no traces of any other life or structures. Even normal undulations are rarely seen. It is said that walking on it will suppress the instinctive yearning for life in one's heart, leading to various impulses of self-termination. And the maze is an independent, entirely new space. Whether there is a bottom depends on the specific situation of the maze. The roaring abyss has no bottom in sight. Li Fan must explore this maze to know. As for why he went down, instead of flying directly out of the maze. That's because Emperor Song had previously mentioned to Li Fan that entering the maze is equivalent to entering a boundless paradise. It's basically impossible to fly out of the maze by just flying. Only by finding the connection between the maze and the normal space, the so-called exit, can one leave. Let's use the roaring abyss as an example. Outside the city of Broken Palm Eternal, as long as a member of the Qingxian army accidentally falls into the abyss and enters its territory, even if it seems to be only at the edge of the abyss, just a step across can return them to safety. But even with such a short distance, because they are not in the same space, even if one flies until death, they may not be able to cross. Since the establishment of Broken Palm Immortal City, no cultivator who accidentally fell into the roaring abyss has been able to return alive. So, generally speaking, the scenery near the maze is different, and as long as one approaches, even if it's covered by white mist, it can still be sensed. This is also where Li Fan's hope lies for escape. Operating the purple sky escape art with all his might, Li Fan continued to descend, and roughly half a day passed. As Li Fan was flying, his expression suddenly changed. Sensing with his divine sense, not far ahead of him and within reach, it seemed like something was blocking there. However, in the devouring white mist, the distance of divine sense perception greatly decreased. By the time he reacted, it was already too late to dodge, and he was about to collide head-on. Two black lights shot out from Li Fan's eyes. Several times faster than his purple light body, they obliterated the hidden shadows in the white mist ahead. Beneath the great five elements annihilation sword, all obstacles turned into nothingness. This also avoided the fate of Li Fan being knocked unconscious. Only then did Li Fan slow down slightly, become vigilant, and cautiously approach. After seeing what was blocking his path, Li Fan couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. It wasn't some strange creature, but a section of collapsed, slanted building. The center of the building was pierced by the annihilation sword, but the original appearance could still be vaguely seen. The entire giant stone-structured tower, its decorations and doors, were still clearly visible. Li Fan didn't rush into this collapsed building but continued to fly downward. Soon, he landed on the ground. With a creak, it seemed like he stepped on something. His divine sense swept over, and Li Fan's heart tightened. Because what he stepped on was unmistakably a living person. Eyes glaring angrily, with a terrifying expression on his face, he stared at Li Fan. How can there be a living person in the maze? This thought flashed through Li Fan's mind in an instant, and his body instinctively reacted. His figure retreated violently, and the great five elements annihilation sword was unsheathed again. However, just as he was on high alert, something that astonished Li Fan happened. The living person he had just made contact with, under Li Fan's gaze, made no movement at all. His body just turned into gray particles and scattered all over the ground in an instant. In just a breath's time, the living person turned into flying ashes. Not a living person, but already dead. Li Fan frowned slightly. Li Fan, who had rich tomb raiding experience, was not unfamiliar with this scene. Those ancient relics sealed for thousands of years, still vividly alive one moment. But after contact with the outside world, they immediately lost their original appearance, becoming rotten beyond recognition. And the situation in this maze was even worse. They directly turned into smoke and disappeared completely. What exactly is this place? Without relaxing his vigilance, Li Fan carefully searched around. The scene before him, even for Li Fan, who was accustomed to bloodshed, couldn't help but feel scalp tingling. Within a radius of 100 meters, there were collapsed and damaged architectural ruins everywhere. And in every corner of the ruins, many bodies lay scattered. They still retained their appearance and expression from before their death. As if they had seen something they deeply hated and feared, their faces were filled with despair and resentment. Time froze at the moment of their death. It's as if a disaster suddenly struck, and everyone in the ruins lost their lives at the same time. No wounds, no bloodstains. But they died like this. Just like when Li Fan accidentally stepped on that corpse earlier, as long as they had contact with this outsider Li Fan, they would turn into flying ashes in an instant and disappear completely. What frightened Li Fan was that these people's identities were obviously not ordinary. The storage rings they wore and the various treasures they had just taken out but hadn't had the chance to use all indicated their identity as cultivators. However, in the face of the unknown existence, they could only wait for death powerless, just like ordinary people. Li Fan approached one of the bodies, trying to remove the storage ring from his hand, to see if he could find any clues about these inexplicably dead cultivators. Unfortunately, it was the same with those corpses. As soon as Li Fan touched them, they immediately dispersed into smoke and disappeared. He tried several times, and the result was the same. Li Fan had no choice but to give up. Suppressing the chill in his heart, he continued to explore outward. The scene remained unchanged. The continuous ruins had become a giant cemetery, burying countless bodies that had died who knows how long ago. So much so that Li Fan began to feel a bit numb. He increased his flying speed and quickly rushed out of the range of these ruins. This seems to be some kind of gathering point. Some of these cultivators have similar clothes, while others are different. Different sects, for some reason, have gathered here. Chapter 359, Strange Turn of Events. Mournful Echoes. Outside the remnants, finally, there was no trace of corpses. Instead, there was desolation and silence. Li Fan didn't forget his objective. After briefly searching the remnants again without finding any useful information, he marked the site, chose a direction, and flew off again, skimming the ground. 2 days later, Li Fan found a new ruin in the Sea of Mist. The scale of this ruin was several times larger than the first one. Correspondingly, the scene of countless corpses stacked was even more tragic. The lively expressions on their faces made Li Fan feel like he was witnessing the scene firsthand. Suppressing the agitation in his heart, Li Fan searched around as usual. Although he didn't find any valuable information, the corpses in the sea of corpses caught his attention. Most of the cultivators in the first and second ruins died instantly. Apart from the expressions of terror and despair on their faces, they didn't leave any information behind. However, among so many people, there were still one or two whose cultivation was relatively stronger. Before their deaths, they stared resentfully and unwillingly in a certain direction. It seemed that the existence that took their lives was there. Even after several years of death, they still maintained this posture. This inadvertently pointed out the direction in the white mist for Li Fan. So, Li Fan followed the instructions of the corpses and swiftly flew for a day, finding the third ruin. Following the murderer's path, Li Fan proceeded. The fourth, fifth, sixth, until there was only enough supplies left to last 3 days. Li Fan had encountered 11 ruins filled with corpses. While rushing towards the 12th ruin, something strange happened. He, who had been flying rapidly forward, unexpectedly returned to the 11th ruin shortly after. After finding the previous markings, Li Fan confirmed it wasn't his illusion. So, he set off again. The result remained the same. After circling around, he returned to the starting point. Li Fan pondered for a moment, not panicking. He attempted a third time. This time, he slowed down, constantly sensing the direction of the 11th ruin while flying. Finally, he figured out what was going on. When he reached a certain position during his flight, he encountered something, making Li Fan's forward direction, in an instant, and without any trace, turned into backward. During the first 2 times, Li Fan was completely unaware, thinking he was still flying forward. In reality, he had turned around. Naturally, it didn't take long for him to return to the original starting point. At this moment, with a solemn expression, Li Fan stood in front of the area that brought about the change. Entering it, his body position remained unchanged. But the 11th ruin, which he had sensed behind him, had somehow appeared in front of him unconsciously. Li Fan furrowed his brow slightly, turned around, and flew backward, trying to distance himself from the 11th ruin again. But before long, the direction became confused again. However, Li Fan already had experience and kept the 11th ruin constantly behind him. Constantly adjusting the direction, he moved forward. After such twists and turns, and spending 2 more days, he finally arrived at the 12th ruin. This ruin was the largest in scale among all the ruins. But on the periphery, there was no trace of corpses. When things are abnormal, they are demonic. Li Fan gathered his spirits and explored towards the center of the ruin. All around was silent. In this separate realm of the maze, even the demonic sounds from the abyss couldn't reach. Aside from the sounds he made himself, Li Fan hadn't heard any other sounds for a long time. But when Li Fan approached the center of the 12th ruin, the sudden rustling noises made his hair stand on end. Through the somehow thinner white mist, Li Fan saw on the ground not far away a cultivator lying face up, but with limbs strangely twisted downward. The hands and feet were irregularly broken. The toes and fingers were twisted together like twists. But with these seemingly creepy limbs, the cultivator crawled slowly and painfully in circles. Unflagging. For who knows how long, it seemed like it would never stop. Li Fan looked at the monster ahead, which had survived for an unknown amount of time in the white mist, his scalp tingling, his heart stopping suddenly. Holding his breath, he slowly retreated. However, the perception of this twisted monster seemed extremely sharp. It immediately sensed the arrival of a stranger. The drooping head snapped onto its belly with a click. Then it turned directly 180 degrees, using its face to stare tightly at Li Fan. The face of the twisted monster fell into Li Fan's eyes, instantly making his heart jump. Making Li Fan's forward direction, in an instant, and without any trace, turned into backward. During the first 2 times, Li Fan was completely unaware, thinking he was still flying forward. In reality, he had turned around. Naturally, it didn't take long for him to return to the original starting point. At this moment, with a solemn expression, Li Fan stood in front of the area that brought about the change. Entering it, his body position remained unchanged. But the 11th ruin, which he had sensed behind him, had somehow appeared in front of him unconsciously. Li Fan furrowed his brow slightly, turned around, and flew backward, trying to distance himself from the 11th ruin again. But before long, the direction became confused again. However, Li Fan already had experience and kept the 11th ruin constantly behind him. Constantly adjusting the direction, he moved forward. After such twists and turns, and spending 2 more days, he finally arrived at the 12th ruin. This ruin was the largest in scale among all the ruins. But on the periphery, there was no trace of corpses. When things are abnormal, they are demonic. Li Fan gathered his spirits and explored towards the center of the ruin. All around was silent. In this separate realm of the maze, even the demonic sounds from the abyss couldn't reach. Aside from the sounds he made himself, Li Fan hadn't heard any other sounds for a long time. But when Li Fan approached the center of the 12th ruin, the sudden rustling noises made his hair stand on end. Through the somehow thinner white mist, Li Fan saw on the ground not far away a cultivator lying face up, but with limbs strangely twisted downward. The hands and feet were irregularly broken. The toes and fingers were twisted together like twists. But with these seemingly creepy limbs, the cultivator crawled slowly and painfully in circles. Unflagging. For who knows how long, it seemed like it would never stop. Li Fan looked at the monster ahead, which had survived for an unknown amount of time in the white mist, his scalp tingling, his heart stopping suddenly. Holding his breath, he slowly retreated. However, the perception of this twisted monster seemed extremely sharp. It immediately sensed the arrival of a stranger. The drooping head snapped onto its belly with a click. Then it turned directly 180 degrees, using its face to stare tightly at Li Fan. The face of the twisted monster fell into Li Fan's eyes, instantly making his heart jump.